I played the wrong one. Sorry. Hey, everybody, welcome. I played the wrong stinger. I'm horrible. I'm so sorry. Shane, take it away.
I can be Chris. It's okay.
Are we live now?
Yeah, we're live. Dave Colin's not here. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button and played
got
the
a lot
wrong
of people
stinger.
upset that Dave Colin's not going to be on the show.
I'm so
now.
sorry. Damn it. There's so many files to click. I apologize.
One Picard producer, another, whatever. Okay, well, it's all good.
Hold
on.
on.
Greetings, you gorgeous pop culture junkies, and welcome to Raw Rant, where honesty is the game plan and truth is the destination. We're hanging out with some of our rowdy, sweaty nerds today. Hopefully, we'll stimulate your brains and recharge your geeky souls. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Shane Montgomery, and with me, as always, rocking the boards is my brother, Brian Montgomery. Did you intentionally give yourself, like, low clapping?
Yeah,
is that, like, low energy?
I gave myself sarcastic clapping.
Thanks. And joining us tonight on Raw Rant is a man who has stood by showrunner Terry Matalas, helping us to levels our Star Trek hearts never thought possible again. Picard Season 3 co-producer Matt Okumura. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Really
better clapping. Thank you. Better.
That's a lot louder than Brian's.
Yes. Also joining us directly from the Burnett work, which offers only the highest IQ pop culture mental libations, the one and only Robert Meyer.
Wow.
Burnett.
Sometimes too many libations, to be honest. Got to stop doing that.
That's fun to watch you when you're libating.
Oh, yeah, no.
Also joining us for the first time tonight, in his own words, a bald dude serving up caffeine-fueled rants about film and television, Geekin with James Hancock. Nice. I love that description of you, James. It was perfect.
Yeah, it's I've learned a long time ago to lean into the baldness instead of trying to disguise it.
It's easier. Just go.
Especially when we're discussing Picard. I mean, he is the icon, the hero for all,
the elephant in the room.
Oh, well,
exactly.
Yeah.
Doesn't get much better.
I had that exact same conversation with my own father
Patrick
about the elephant in the room. So that scene was particularly poignant for me.
It was really well done. The timing of the editorial of that scene, because they let it linger. Can we talk about the elephant in the room? And there was like beat, just draw it out. I thought that was, another thing that Picard Season 3 is not getting credit for is the editorial.
Absolutely.
Your editorial staff, man, they crush every episode.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, those guys, they're amazing, led by, Drew, who Terry brought over from 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
And Drew he's a magician. I mean, the things he was able to do, the kind of rhythm and the pacing, just knowing when to cut to certain things, it just makes life easier for everybody.
That was another thing. I mean, that scene, that particular, because that was a great joke, and you could have easily, if a less talented editor cut that, they would have stepped on it. He would have said, can we talk about the elephant in the room? And you would have cut to the reaction of Picard, huh? The hair. But instead, he drew it out to allow you going. The audience is like, what is the elephant in the room? And when he says it, it crushed the joke. I was like, it was so good. The timing was perfect. And that, you can't teach that.
No, that's just instinct. That's just you understand the way a joke works.
Yes. And that was just, it's a little tiny thing, but man, it was great. Loved it.
All right, before we get too much further into it, I want to quickly, before we jump into the panel with our amazing guests, I want to thank EKSTER Wallets for sponsoring today's show. There may not be any need for a wallet in the future of Star Trek, but it's a necessity for us in our daily lives. And oh boy, do we find the last wallet you'll ever need to own. We have discovered the most efficient smart wallet in the world, and it's made by EKSTER. They have revolutionized the wallet, and we will never go back to bifold. Super slim, sleek, and futuristic EKSTER wallets can fit in your front pocket and still hold up to 12 cards. Guys, I got to tell you, it's a fantastic wallet. If you get a chance, check it out, and you're looking for one, please, you get 25% off your order when you use code the Popcast. The link will be in the description below. Thanks so much. And now, let's get to Picard Season 3. But before we dig into questions for Matt, this is James's first time on the show, and everyone knows how the rest of us feel about Picard Season 3 thus far. James, can you tell us a little bit about how you are enjoying the show? And just go ahead and forget that Matt is sitting here judging everything you're about to say.
Just don't worry about the fact that the guy right next to you was deeply involved in the creation of the show. Go ahead.
The good news is I don't have to beat around the bush. I'm absolutely thrilled with how the show is proceeding. And I can't remember the last time where I drifted away from a franchise and came back, not only coming back, but having my enthusiasm be kind of like doubled or tripled from where it was before, because now I'm revisiting episodes of Deep Space Nine about the Dominion War. I'm revisiting episodes from the Next Generation. So to have it be like a literal shot in the arm from my love and affection for this shared universe, yeah, I guess I tip my hat to Matt and everybody on the writing staff and everybody in the cast and everybody directing and producing behind the scenes. It's definitely it's a once in a lifetime thing where we see in the world of, I guess, fandom, we're so used to division and people calling each other names. Just to see everybody loving Star Trek again, it's going to make me cry even talking about it. So just thank you for what you've given us, because it's been one hell of a ride.
Wow, that was really great.
That is incredibly kind. Thank you very much. And honestly, it you know, it's kind of amazing what can happen when the captain of the ship has Trek, you know, down to his DNA. I mean, that is it. That is everything. And when you have such a great unifying vision like that, that is, you know, that knows Trek inside and out, you know, down to the whistles and the door chimes and the sound of James Horner and Jerry Goldsmith, and you can't go wrong, you know.
Well said, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, by the way. You, Terry, and the team have given us such an unexpected dessert for this final season of Picard. As co-producer, as writer, can you tell us a little bit about your role in the production and the process? In your own words, describe what you all hope to accomplish with this season.
Sure. I mean, I'll kind of work my way backwards with that question. It really started with Terry going, look, they're going to let us do this. They're going to give us the dream season. We're going to get to do the sort of reunion of this legendary cast. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, you can.
Okay, let's not fuck it up. And it was really from the onset, from day one. Terry goes, I want to give the TNG cast the send off they never got. I want to give them the send off that TOS got in Undiscovered Country, and that feeling of one last adventure. And then on top of that, and the part that I think was really, you know, honestly, was really brilliant, was to go, and how can we enrich this in a way that nobody expects? How can we take these characters and try to understand what's happened to them in the last 30 years, how their relationships have changed, what's surprising about seeing them again? But what, you know, while doing that, what also feels true and right to them? And that was it. I mean, that was our whole goal was, you know, don't drop the ball and try and really honor them as fans, you know, because we're fans too. We love this stuff. I grew up on this. And the last thing we wanted to do was, you know, tell a story that wasn't worthy of them and everything they've been through the last 3 decades. Yeah. So, and I honestly, my journey was kind of unique. I interviewed with Terry and Michael Chabon in December of 2019. And they were gearing up to start season 2. And at the time, they couldn't bring me aboard. They were full. The ship was full. But, and this amazes me to this day, to his credit, Terry remembered me. And 9 months later, I get a call going, hey, can you start soon? And I came in towards the tail end of season 2. And then we rolled right into season 3. And we shared, you know, common interests such as the movies that we referenced, the quotes that we would say to each other back and forth. And I could always kind of understand where he was coming from, and at least the tone that he wanted every step of the way. And that was an incredible part of this whole thing, was like, we knew there was a feeling we were trying to hit. And
what was that? If you can go into a little bit, just what was the feeling? What was the tone? What was it? I know you wanted to honor the characters and tell the story and give them a good send off, but
yeah.
What were you really shooting for as far as hitting that direction?
Something fun, you know, bringing back the fun, bringing back the adventure. I specifically remember, especially for episode 4, Terry came down and he was like, let's bring back the sense of wonder that's been missing. You know, the sense that we all felt watching Farpoint at the very end, going, oh my God, this is something we've never seen before. And let's bring back sort of the emotional richness between these characters, and that at the end of the day, they're family, you know, and families fight and they bicker and they don't always get along. But honestly, at the very sort of, you know, when their backs are against the wall, they will always be there for each other. And we wanted to feel that sense again.
Awesome. So what was it like just coming in, you know, you get in the writer's room, you guys work together. You came in and a lot of the writers were already coming from 12 Monkeys with Terry. So you kind of came in at Picard season 2, right, is when you came in. Yes. So what was it like coming into a team that had already been working together? And does that teamwork create an interesting synergy based on other projects you've been on? Like, what's the difference between this project and, say, other ones you've done?
This was a lot more intimidating because, number one, it's Star Trek. You know, this is one of the things that you pray and you hope you get to write, and you realize, you know, you never think it's going to happen. Like, come on, you know, how many people want to write Trek and just never kind of get there? And I knew that at the time it was Chris Monfett and Terry from 12 Monkeys, and they had a shorthand. And you had to pick up on that shorthand very quickly. And thankfully, both were so kind to take me under their wing and kind of, you know, it was like learning by osmosis. The longer you were there, the more you absorbed and you picked up on the vocabulary and the feelings. And again, because we sort of had the same references, it was like, it's like this moment, you know, in Undiscovered Country, or it's like this moment in Wrath of Khan, or even like this moment in Goodfellas. And you can kind of pull these things out and you're like, okay, I know what that feels like. And then you understand the target that you're trying to hit. But I was a fan of 12 Monkeys. That's kind of the reason why I wanted to be here. It was 12 Monkeys is one of those rare shows that actually sticks the landing. Like, I can probably count on one hand the number of shows that have ever done that. And that ending is just, if you haven't seen it, guys, go and watch it. It's so good. And
plus
so
it's time
emotional.
travel, which is really hard to stick a landing to.
Yeah, because you know, right? All the loops and the double backs and all those things, everything is paid off brilliantly. So I was keen to learn at the feet of these guys.
I would recommend this.
You got one too.
Yeah,
he's flexing, everybody. Robert's flexing.
No, Terry gave it to me, and it's
what's that?
It's from Via Vision, and they only put this out in Australia.
Yeah,
and it's a great set. And I had not watched the show. I watched it sporadically when it was on, but watching it all the way through, like, I've binged the first 3 seasons, and I'm watching season 4 now. It's pretty astonishing how it all interconnects. It's really well done.
Yeah,
you guys are showing all your 12 Monkey stuff up. I watched it on my phone. So we got a super chat from 200 Watt Studio. The editing. Love the way you cut the scenes on a number. Example, Shaw, give me 5. Cut to Beverly counting down to the next contraction. 5, 4, 3. Same with Where's 7, then Beverly 7, 6, 5. Yeah, I noticed that too. That was really cool. Thank you, 200 Watt.
Yeah, no, that was that is one of the things. Like, everything feels very professional on the show. Like, it's not like we're not here to disparage other seasons of Trek. You know, we all know how we feel about the first couple seasons of Picard. It was not what we felt was the best effort, but there's a sense of the way you guys time things, the way that there is no plot hole. I haven't seen any plot holes. Everything is very well thought out. Do you guys, when you're putting together your, hey, we want to take a piece of Crimson Tide here, this idea, and we want to do things, do you take that and then say, okay, now let's look at canon, let's look at the characters, what would they really do? How much of that is really put into it? Because I can feel the love that you guys spent doing that, even though you are taking us on maybe different adventures. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everything was scrutinized 10 times over because, it just meant so much to all of us, especially Terry. And we would come up with a concept. Like, Terry knew he wanted to do sort of this kind of Wrath of Khan, Crimson Tide, Hunt for Red October type two-parter. I mean, that was always in the plan. We was like, let's take Trek back to, you know, the sort of submarine battles that we all loved. Let's hear that patter between, you know, the ensigns and the helm and you know, icers and aft thrusters firing, that, you know, that kind of thing. So once you have that concept, you're like, okay, but what does that really mean? What is that? You know, like, I see the visuals, I know what it should feel like, but let's talk about, you know, not just the practical goal of what they have to do, which is escape the nebula, right? But let's talk about the conflict between the characters inside the bridge. And if we're gunning for red tide, then who's arguing and why? And I think it came up very early. It was like, you know what they've never gotten to do? And it might have been Frakes who mentioned it in one of his meetings with Terry. It was like, Riker and Picard have never fundamentally disagreed on a level they do in this show. They've always, Riker, and some of that's the power dynamic, right? Because Riker is number one. He will always acquiesce to a certain degree. But now you don't have that power dynamic anymore. So what happens? And then you throw on top of that, you know, when we were talking in the room, this idea of Riker having lost a child, and that's colored his perspective. And then on the opposite side, you have Picard, who is going to lose a child if they don't escape. And that colors his perspective. And now you've got what I think we all love, which is two sides of an argument, and from both point of views, they're right.
Well
and
said.
That is the best to me. I love it when you can argue both sides of something.
Do you guys sit around in the writing room and like, okay, so I mean, you got to come up with something from the beginning. You got this basic, you know, foundation. Okay, we've got all the TNG characters. We're going to come back and tell one last big story. You know, how do you start, you know, pulling off these things? Like, okay, we're going to have, you know, do you throw it against the wall and then you guys like mold it into something, or how do you end up putting these things together?
Honestly, you start blue skying. You know, that's the process that we call in the very beginning. Blue skying. Essentially, everyone just throws everything against the wall. What do you want to see? Tell me what you want to see in this. And then you start finding kind of a structure there. You start finding character, you know, arcs within the episode, and you start throwing out whatever doesn't feel right, whatever doesn't feel correct. And sometimes you'll go really far down the line. Like, there were storylines that we broke all the way through, and we just got to the end and was like, something's not clicking. Okay, let's go back to the beginning and let's start again. And I think I forgot who told me this, but somebody was explaining, I know what it was. It was Lucasfilm. They explained Tony Gilroy in a way that I thought was just perfect for Andor. It was that Tony is the immune system of the show. He lets in anything that will make it healthy and better, and he keeps out anything that will hurt it. And honestly, that's what Terry is for this. Terry instinctively knew when we were on the right track and when we were getting off it. What felt right, what felt wrong. And you can see that evident because there's a million ways that argument on the bridge could go, right?
Right.
There's like 1,000 ways you could have had anybody arguing in that bridge. But what feels the most right are those two men, one who's lost a son and one who's about to.
Right. And I think it comes from, you know, Terry is a hardcore fan. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about people's reactions to Picard season 3. And I think a lot of it has to do with how deeply you care about the characters. Like, it's already a great Star Trek story, but if you have a deep affinity for the TNG characters, then seeing them so many years later in these developed story arcs, you get this strong emotion. So while we're here, let me quickly take a poll on the panel. And let's also do it here in the chat. Okay, here's the question. How many of you either teared up or downright cried at the end of the exchange between Ro and Picard? Okay, I want to hear it in the chat. I want to hear it in the thing, because I've already been the first to say it. I teared up big time at the end of that exchange between them. How about you, James?
I did not physically tear up, but I was crying inside.
Okay. Robert, we know you bawled like a baby.
I did. I mean, what's really interesting though is also because Star Trek is so ingrained in me personally. The first time I ever cried in anything, in any form of entertainment, was in Star Trek 2. And it was when Kirk delivers Spock's eulogy and he stumbles over his own word. You know, he says, of all the souls I've encountered in my travels, his was the most, because you'd never seen that happen. And here was somebody that I'd carried with me since I was a little kid, and watching him break down and then feeling the death of that character. And, you know, watching, the thing about, I've tried to explain this about Star Trek, is growing up with Star Trek at different parts of my life. When I was a small child, there was TOS. Then there was the TOS movies as I moved into adolescence, my teen years, and my young adult years. And when I was in college, Next Generation debuted, and I carried with those. I moved from where I grew up in Seattle. I moved to California to go to college at USC. So that, and Next Generation was still on the air, you know. And when I had gotten out of college, Deep Space Nine started. So my early adulthood, my early 20s. And so the characters and the movies were still, the Next Generation movies were still going on. So the thing about, I always loved Ensign Ro. You know, I always loved that character. And the conversation, what I thought, again, it speaks to the writing of this show, this season. The conversation they were having served two things. You got to see Patrick Stewart and Jean-Luc Picard and Ro Laren have this in-universe conversation that had been building for 30 years. But at the same time, the conversation that they were having was convincing each one of these characters that the other wasn't a changeling. And I thought that was that to me is deft writing. And I think you see that all the time. And I'm the conversation with Picard, like you just explained, Matt, about how you have these two characters both dealing with the fact that one person has a son they just found out about, the other has already lost a son. But at the same time, it harks back to the great situation in Crimson Tide, where both Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, they're both right.
Yes.
You know, and it's so great at the end when Jason Robards, you know, they have the commission delivers their findings at the end of Crimson Tide, and Jason Robards says, you guys were both right. And because Gene Hackman's character was going by the book. Yep. Like, I can't, so what, and yet in a way we're supposed to see, because we're with Denzel Washington, but then when you realize, and then at the end of the movie, the conversation they have about the Lipizan, or it says Lipizan or Stallions, right. You know, it's such a great, if you know that movie, I mean, look, all of Crimson Tide's a little silly. That's not exactly, but it's such a great movie. Yeah. And to use that, and Star Trek always looked back at other previously, Balance of Terror, you know, you go back to Run Silent, Run Deep, and they were always looking at other pieces that had come out and use them for inspiration. And that's one of the things that I think, you know, when I first met Terry, we talked a little bit about Hunt for Red October. And I've often said that what you guys did so well, you created a Tom Clancy techno thriller. And the reason that Tom Clancy's books, you know, I remember reading Red Storm Rising, and the detail that he would go into was insane. And that's kind of what you have done, you know, with this season. And I think if fans of that kind of storytelling are really responding.
That is extremely high praise, and I, you know, thank you for that.
Don't thank me. I just recognize. I thank you guys.
But that Denzel, you know, Gene back and forth was the model from day one.
Yeah.
That once we hit upon those two, it was like, okay, there it is. And the thing you also picked up on, you know, so smartly between Ro and Picard is, when we look back, we were trying to come up. We're like, you know, who can he at the outset completely distrust and be absolutely motivated to do that? And then by the end of it, and you only have an hour, by the end of it, completely trust. And there's not a lot of people that can do that in his life.
No, and that was, again, a genius bit of writing, you know, and that's, I also think there's a lot of fans out there who are watching the show that aren't necessarily as on board as we are, that can't see the forest through the trees when they're looking at what you guys have accomplished from a writing perspective. And that's a perfect example. You just stated it. And that's why the show, to me, has been such a joy to watch.
Also, shout out to Michelle Forbes for bringing the heat. I mean, I've been watching her and stuff since
man.
like Swimming with Sharks.
Oh my God, yes.
Her voice is so commanding, and I think she's a world-class actress. And yeah, that episode was elevated dramatically due to her contributions and her instincts.
She's scary, right? When she first comes in,
totally.
you're like, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
she's so cold. Yeah, I was wondering. I was on the fence. I'm like, so she's a changeling, right? And then the telegraph with the blood. I'm like, oh, maybe not. We got a super chat from It's Joseph Martin, $20. Thank you, Joseph. Hey, Matt, the writing on Picard season 3 has been incredible. As an aspiring writer, I'm curious to know if there are any books, resources on screenwriting that you recommend, or that are referenced in the writer's room? ? Oh,
that's a great question. Not really, to be honest. In terms of books, no. But what I will say is that probably my best screenwriting lessons has come from two places. One, and this is great because it's free. Go online and find the scripts to your favorite episodes of TV and your favorite movies and read them all. Just devour them. And I'm talking like, don't go into the dozens, go into the hundreds, because you will find what works and what doesn't for you, and you will understand rhythm. You will understand, how to describe geography and action. You will know when to use a word and when not to. And then the second thing, also free, record movie audio and just listen to it. Don't watch it. Just listen to it and figure out the rhythm that you love, and then try to diagnose why. That's honestly the way I learned.
I did precisely that with the last 5 episodes of Picard yesterday while playing the Diablo 4 open beta. I was like, I'm just going to listen to Picard in the background while trying out this game, and it's still riveting.
Excellent. Wow. We held up the test.
Nice.
We got another super
Matt
chat
Kadish from the Salty Nerd podcast. Really quick here, Brian.
Hey,
Matt, we have a quick question. You have to answer this poll before you're allowed to say one word. Did you cry at the end of the scene or tear up at the end of the scene with Ro Laren and Picard?
No.
Okay. He's the only one on the panel who did not. I didn't
tear up either, but I felt
but you
emotional.
always say you don't tear up, so you don't.
I didn't tear. I'm sorry, but I felt emotional.
I never had much of a connection to Ensign Ro. So like for me, it was just kind of like, okay, well, we got the resolution of this storyline. I want to get back to Jack and all the crazy conspiracy stuff that's going on.
Real quick, we got a super chat from about writing too from just a dipshit from Ohio. Thank you. He says, I hope this season of Picard is the beginning of a course correction for all new Trek. The writing on this season has been fantastic. So I'm sorry, less of a question, more of a statement for Matt. The writing has been fantastic.
Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying that Ro Laren, to me, I mean, she was not one of my favorite characters. She was interesting, but I didn't have any emotional connection to the character really through TNG. It would have been cool to see her go into DS9 and play the Kira character, which would have been neat to see, but for Michelle, that didn't work out. And I do want you to tell that story, Robert, in a second about Michelle, because you knew her at one time. But when she came out and did this whole thing with Picard, it was like there was a complete change in the character. I had, there was a difference in her. She'd had life experience. She'd obviously been through things. And all of a sudden, I was completely connected to what she had to say. And all of a sudden, I now care about this character because of Picard season 3 more than I ever did on TNG. And that is something that you have to say, for a series, for when you're doing something 30 years later, to make you like the character so much more in this one-off season is such a, shout out to you guys' writing, to your choices. What went into bringing back Ro Laren specifically? And what made you guys decide to bring that character back, and how did that process work out?
We went back when we look back at all the characters that were at our disposal, and we tossed around a few names, and it was it became very clear that you could only kind of go to a few that emotionally meant something to Picard specifically. There was a plenty of guest stars and a cavalcade of people that came through, but really there was one that broke his heart, and one that was unresolved for 30 years had we not brought her back. And it was Terry, who was like, look, if we're going to do this, let's close off this thing that I meaning Terry as a fan, always wanted to close off, that I always wanted to see the resolution of. And then that sort of led to this, okay, but what does that mean? Right. And then when you combine that with this espionage story of who do you trust, who are imposters, who's real, in every definition of the word, she was kind of the only choice. And very early on, it was like, no, it's got to be Ro. It has to be Ro. And every time we went, well, what if it was so-and-so? It was, nope, it's not as good. It's not as strong.
Who was some of the, can you share some of the so-and-sos?
I can't.
Right.
I can't because we're not done. So
yeah, I got it. That's true. That's true. Good point.
That is
Matt,
all I'll say.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question?
Go for it.
Yes, of course.
So the thing that did impress me about Ro Laren appearing on the show is the fact that there were 0 leaks that this was going to happen. So like when she shows up on screen, I'm like, is that Ensign Ro? What's going on here? What precautions did you guys take to keep that from like leaking out to the interwebs?
Oh man, honestly, that one's above my pay grade. I know we had NDAs for everybody on set and everybody who was writing, and obviously Michelle herself would never say anything. But I think people just respected it. I can't believe it didn't. I was positive that it was going to leak, and to this day I'm stunned that it hit as hard as it did, and no one found out.
Well, I know that J.J. Abrams had like CIA level lockdowns during like Into Darkness and all this stuff, and stuff still got out.
Oh yeah, he's got the red scripts and the Mylar scripts, which you can't photocopy. Yeah,
and everyone was like, "It's Khan, right? I heard it was Khan." He's like, "No, it's not Khan. It's not Khan.
It's not Khan. It's not Khan."
Well,
it was Khan.
Yeah, it was Khan.
Having seen the episodes pretty far in advance, when I watched it, it was one of the great joys for me. There was no effing way that I was going to be responsible for ruining that surprise.
Yeah.
Because it was so affecting. And you didn't want to be responsible. Because I really don't understand the fascination with here's the thing about fandom. We always want to have more information than the next guy. When I was a little kid, you'd go to a convention and everybody was out informing one another. They're trying to show how much they know about. I know more about the lore of Frank Herbert's Dune series than you do. I mean, that's right. And that has absolutely translated over to the social media world when everybody cannot wait to spoil things. And I've never understood. I mean, I understand the impulse, but why compromise a great story for other people? And, for me, people sometimes joke that I spoil things, but that's after they're already out or something. But why would you want to do that?
It reminds me of the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones, where the readers knew the Red Wedding was coming, but they just sat on it and they watched the whole world melt.
And it was great. It was so glorious.
I remember that on Twitter.
And so super chat from...
Go ahead.
Sorry, real quick, and then you can read this. And to the credit of a lot of even insiders, because there were some insiders sending us stuff that they never told us about Michelle Forbes. That was the one thing that they never told us about. They told us about a lot of things that they shouldn't have.
Man.
But,
originally we had an insider that we thought blew up the whole thing.
Right.
But then we saw the whole thing. And we're like, wow, he left out a couple really key things, and it was for our benefit,
Yeah, he's like, you don't want to know that. So even the people doing bad things were like trying to keep
they're still trying to protect the good stuff. We got super chat from Billy Armfield. Who would win in a fight, James or Picard? Ultimate BVB. My money's on James.
If it's the Patrick Stewart from Excalibur, Leondegrance, he would kick all of our asses.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. He would kick the viewers' asses by proxy. Right.
Yeah, but full disclosure, Billy Armfield is my little brother, so that's him just having a laugh at my expense.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Billy.
Figured it was something like that. We got another super chat from Professor Spencer in Television Chill. That's cool. How come that season 3 looks well lit and just awesome on my iPhone, but on my PC and laptop it looks dim, blacks are being crushed, and the colors are desaturated? No SDR mastering, HDR mandatory? I don't know. That's the question. I have no answer.
Apple shills, we're watching you, Apple shills.
Look, man, I think it depends on the device, I suppose. I like we said last week, my 15-year-old plasma TV looks fantastic. So
there's a handshake issue, and it happens a lot. And because if I have a plasma as well, I have the last 65-inch plasma Panasonic made with their Kuro, their black technology.
Oh my God, I have the same one.
I got it in 2013. That was the last one that they made.
Bro.
That TV to this day is one of the greatest screens ever.
Well, it sounds amazing too. It's great.
Anyone's has ever made. And then the other room, I have a 2022 LG 65-inch OLED set, and I spent hours tweaking them with professional grade calibration equipment. The plasma Star Trek Picard season 3 looks amazing.
It does.
The detail, the cinematography is absolutely incredible. Watching it on my OLED, you can't see anything.
When the Space Babies came out on that sucker, dude,
it was.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there is, like, when you're watching, because as a home theater aficionado and somebody that produces special features and things like this has always been a problem with the how things are formatted with HDR, how Paramount Plus talks to TVs. Like, HBO really has their shit together. Mm-hmm. So if you want to watch something in Dolby Vision, it's in Dolby Vision. It's and all my equipment, like my Atmos system, kicks in. I don't have to do anything. It's all set up. Disney Plus does a great job too. Paramount Plus, that app has always sucked from the beginning.
Peacock has problems too.
Well, and
even Hulu has problems.
Well, I don't watch
as
as much stuff on those. So,
well, and Paramount had to roll out some pushes, like some changes with some of the formatting, right? During some
and
of the
Terry
episodes.
was saying they had to go back and fixing. And I have to tell you, there is an institutional problem across many of the broadcast platforms where the people that are working don't know what they're doing. And I'll flat out say that, because we're having issues with QC, just QC issues, people setting up bars and tones and time code properly. The difference between frame rates and things like that. And because all the veterans, they all cost too much and they've all been retired. And so it's really hard, especially a lot of these TV shows, the nits, the level of brightness in terms of what the color timing people are doing. They're crushing the blacks way too much, and they don't know. And it's happening a lot across the board, and it's really frustrating. And I think of all the shows, we already saw it in Game of Thrones, like the long night, when no one could see anything that was happening. I mean, you go back and you watch the Blu-rays or the 4Ks, they all look beautiful. I can't wait. I really hope Paramount releases this in 4K. I don't know if they will. It'll be an upgrade from the 2K. I believe it was finished in 2K, but it'll look fantastic.
Matt, if you ever get insight on that, okay, I will buy a steel box of Picard season 3 in a heartbeat. It wouldn't even be a question.
I would too.
I've also been told if you have a smart TV, if you take it off of normal and put it on, I can't remember what the next one is, but filter through a couple of those and you see it a little better. Look, you can go back. Terry's, created a lot of shows. You can see that, the lighting's always done well. Whatever's happening here that's causing people to have issues, we don't know whether it's certain people's sets. I haven't had a problem. I was trying to explain in our show on Thursday, I honestly asked everybody, I'm like, I don't understand what the issue is, because I haven't, and perhaps it's because I'm lost in the story and I'm lost in the characters, and details are not that important to me as important, at least, as the story and the characters are. So maybe I don't notice it, but it's been pretty half and half on how people feel about it. But I don't know. What do you think, James? How have you felt about what it's looked like?
I don't know if I've found like the perfect, format by accident or by design, but I've had zero complaints with the look of the show. And honestly, some of the effect shots, I think, are some of the best effect shots in the history of Star Trek. Like watching the Intrepid rising up when it's like injured and about to face off with the Titan. I was like, oh, this is just awe-inspiring stuff to behold. But ordinarily I would dive in with a super chat, but I got to steal a quick turn with a quick question for Matt. I would love it if you could give us a brief look under the hood when it comes to, once Terry Matalas knows where the season's going and he's done his kind of white blood cell thing of keeping things out that he doesn't want in. When you as a writer are handed the reins of an episode like episode 8, and I've not seen what's coming, so I'm totally oblivious. Can you just walk us through the process of your own contributions versus kind of the guidelines by the show overall?
Sure. I mean, most shows run very similarly in that, you will attack an episode together as a group. Whoever isn't off writing an episode, everyone's still left in the writer's room. We'll work together. There are no egos. all ideas are welcomed. And the kind of higher ups, the co-EPs, if Terry's not in the room, the co-EPs take it upon themselves to go, okay, let's look at the story of the acts, as we say. What happens in Act 1, just generally, beginning and end? What happens in Act 2? Okay, where do we need to be at the end of Act 3? And then where do we need to be at the end of the episode? And then, so it's sort of like a microscope. You look at it from 30,000 feet and you go, okay, so this, and this. All right, what does that mean? How many scenes will that take to accomplish? And then you break those general beats into very specific scenes, and you write cards on the board, and then you beat that out. And then, sometimes you'll break things by storyline, like Picard Riker storyline, Seven Shaw storyline, all the beats of that story, and then you'll mix and match. And sometimes it happens that way. And at the end of the day, you take a look at it, and Terry has by this point heard it, vetted it, and changed some things around. And you vet it, and you look at it, and you go, okay, let's run through the whole thing. Let's just, beginning to end, somebody tell the story of this episode. And if it's your episode, you usually go up to the whiteboard and you go, okay, Act 1, and you just tell the story, start to end. And the whole running staff and Terry is sitting there, and they're listening, going, okay, stop. That's weird. Why don't we flip those two scenes? Or I don't know that emotion is paying off. We need a moment here, and then you go off and you write an outline, and then it's vetted again and again and again. And then you write the script, and it's vetted again. And, it's kind of, people think it's like, oh, you just write start to end and there's a script. No, this thing has been through the ringer about 5 million times. And really, even when you're sitting there on set, you're going, does that line feel weird to you? Yeah. Okay. What? Cut that. Don't say those two words. Just leave it at that button. And then even in editing, when Terry's sitting with Drew and he's sitting there in the editing room and he's watching these sequences, cut that line, take that out. Can we move this there, put that there? And it's made again, it's written again in editing. And so anybody at any point can have an idea in there, and anybody at any point can really create something. And that's kind of the beauty of a writer's room. And it's Terry at the end of the day that has that final say. That is the showrunner's job.
Yeah, and it shows that there's like a respectful team effort here. It really does to me. From Yellow Flash 2. How you doing, brother? $20. I've hated all the new Star Trek, and this turnaround with Picard is the most improvement I've ever seen in a show yet. This feels like TNG's cast, Undiscovered Country. Great job.
Yes, great comment. Thank you, Yellow Flash. We just followed you on Twitter, by the way. If you want to get in contact, we'll get you on a future show. I got to tell you guys, Matt, it does have that feel. Like these, when I started watching it, I was like, these feel like TOS movies to me. Was that something you guys were going for?
Yeah, that was the goal from the outset. It was let's just do the, we had a saying. Whenever somebody pitched something great, Terry would go, "That's in the movie." Literally, that's in the movie. Whenever somebody improvs something great, like Shaw's, that the little knighthood thing he does, like that's in the movie. You just knew it on set. You're sitting there going, "Yep, that's there."
That was impromptu, right?
That was impromptu. It's not in the script. There were a lot of great things from Cindy and Chris, but that's one that Stashwick was like, "I'm just going to try something."
Give that man a show.
Exactly.
He comes from an improv background, which I think is really. He's also very smart and witty, and so it's been great to see. I'm sure there's a lot of those little things that sometimes producers and showrunners don't necessarily like that when you go off page, but clearly, as Terry had said earlier, that we're writing now for Captain Stashwick, so you guys knew what you were getting, and I think you probably sort of expected Stashwick to bring some of that with him as part of his process.
Absolutely. I mean, who knows better to write for him than the writers of 12 Monkeys who wrote Geekin. And when you have writers like Terry and Sean and Chris who know how to write to Todd, it just gives Todd more ammo to then create and play on set and create those moments and be motivated by those moments. It is sort of this harmony where everyone's working in concert together.
Well said. Kadish, you have a question for Matt?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the 12 Monkeys TV show. I think it's one of the most brilliantly written shows probably ever. Only thing
Agreed.
to ever get time travel right.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
And the amount of planning that had to go into that show in order to get all the time travel right. Like you have stuff that pays off like in season 5 that was set up in season 1, you know? So like it's the amount of forethought and planning that goes into that type of thing is just off the wall. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how Metalis kind of like plotted out the meta narrative of this season to make sure that everything pays off the way it should.
It's a great question. I will say that we always knew the ending without giving away anything. We always knew where we were going. And to me, that's always the key. You always have to know where you're going so that you can then weave in those setups along the way. And then, you know, the nice thing about having the staff on during production is that we are able to then go back. If there are things that we discover, you know, in episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we can then go back to 1 and 2 and kind of weave these small things in there. But I got to say, there weren't a lot of stuff that we had to retroactively, you know, weave in. It was a lot of it was just we knew where we're going. We knew what moments we wanted to hit from the outset, and you know, the show this season was built right from the ground up.
Really well said. Thank you, Matt. So I think we have a couple of super chats in there, Brian.
Yes, thank you.
Forbes, can you jump on those?
Thank you. Yeah, it's Matthew Gladney for $10. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that we have a lot of mysteries going on and that several are resolved from one episode to the next while others are still out there. Love the storytelling going on in season 3. Also, Dork Knight had a question. He texted me instead of putting it in the super chat. I'm not sure why he did that, Dork, but he wanted to know. It's very odd. I'm just saying it's very odd, Danny.
Thanks, Danny.
He did want to know why, if you felt it 100% necessary to kill off Ro Laren, and if there was a chance that maybe she didn't die.
You know, we talked about it a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot, because we scrutinized this decision backwards and forwards, and I think at the end of the day, what was important for that episode was twofold, at least for me, and I can't speak for any other writers. This is just me talking. Joining the Maquis was in direct violation of Starfleet, but it was the right thing to do according to her own personal code. And I think it was vitally important for Picard to see that that part of her hadn't changed, and that the same strength and the same code is what leads her to the decision she makes at the end of episode 5. And had you not had that specific decision and those specific consequences, I'm not sure that Picard would have actually learned the lesson. When he says, "I see you," it's in that moment that he knows, oh my God, she's giving up everything for something she believes in. Not necessarily Starfleet, in my opinion, but for this crew. For these people who she cares about and for this cause that she believes in.
That line's so powerful, you just gave me goosebumps just by quoting the line, making me remember the scene.
Exactly. And, you know, I don't know. I think he finally got it in that moment, you know, and I think, God, Robert, you would know this better than me, but I think it was Sisko at some point in DS9 goes like, hey, you know, it's really easy for us, Starfleet, who's got it really good sitting in this chair, to say holier than thou, and not the people in the DMZ who are fighting for their life, and that right and wrong means something completely different for them. And that was Ro always knew that.
And, you know, I think you're absolutely right about that. And one of the things that's really interesting about how Star Trek became, with Deep Space Nine, became more sophisticated, a lot of people said, oh, it was moving away from Roddenberry's vision of utopia. But the thing is, the vision of utopia that we saw in the original Star Trek and in Next Generation wasn't necessarily threatened.
Right.
Whereas the Dominion War, nobody wanted that war. And then the idea with the Cardassians and the Bajorans and the demilitarized zone and the Maquis, you had people that just wanted to hold on to their families and their land.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it had so many things that were analogous, even in a Next Generation when we first met Ro. There was allusions to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the Balkans conflict. I mean, all kinds of things. And that is something. What's interesting too is once there was no need. I mean, I'm sure at the end of the Dominion War, there was really no need for the Maquis anymore. I'm sure that these situations were dealt with and resolved. So that's what allowed someone. And here's, if I can just say, like, people were nitpicking about Ro Laren's Bajoran earring, going, that looks more like Kira's. Remember, that wasn't her Bajoran earring. That was a piece of tech that she had made. It wasn't like she took her old earring, and she probably didn't have that earring anymore. People lose, I mean, women lose earrings all the time. No offense, but they do, And it bothers me when clearly that earring was not a real Bajoran earring. It was, as Riker says in the episode, it's spycraft. It's old school spycraft. Yeah. So she had that made, and it probably looked more like Kira's earring than. And so when you're watching these kinds of episodes, you have to extrapolate. They might not have said exactly where this stuff comes from, but you as a viewer, astute viewers, have to extrapolate their own minds where, okay, I mean, you're talking 30 years. Why would she be wearing the same earring? Who's to say after everything she's been through, she's gone back to prison, she's come out of prison, she's in Starfleet intelligence, and this thing that she has isn't even a real Bajoran earring. It just looks like one. What it is where she's got all of her investigation stored away. It's a data chip.
And but Rob, I'm glad that we're able to actually complain about the little nitpicky stuff, because for a while the stuff was less of complaints and more of less observational complaints and more really big complaints. And now we're like, well, what about this?
Well, that was the point I was going to make is in Discovery when there's 3 or 5 or 7 red beacons that appear throughout the galaxy all at one time. Well, anyone's like, that's not how light works. You would never, if you're going around the whole galaxy, some light would take 75,000 light years to get here. Other light would, so there was no, when I watch something like that, I can't get past. I'm like, this is somebody.
How light works.
Yeah, this is somebody who doesn't understand actual science. Well, these beacons showed up all at the same time from throughout the galaxy. How did you see that? What in what universe does that happen? And so when that becomes a plot point, somebody in the writer's room, which is where Matt or Terry would go, we can't have 8 beacons show up all at one time and be able to register them. That's not how it works. And so the Red Angel or whatever. And when stuff like that happens, that's when I get pissed.
Well, I was actually wondering, and I asked the last stream we were on, Matt, maybe you can answer it. Why didn't the Titan just use their repair drones to act as fighter craft that could attack the Shrike?
Oh, here we go.
Before we answer that question,
because that was a tactic that was employed 100 years prior.
From No Money G, $10. Thank you, RMB and Brian Shane. You brought me back to Trek because I trusted your opinions for PS3. Matt and team, thank you too. Now this is Star Trek. I'm just going to read some of these statements off before I get to the questions. Okay?
Thanks, No Money. Appreciate you.
Thank you, No Money.
Thank you.
From Foxhound for $1.99. Spoilers saved me from The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, me too. Sorry. I had a lot of hope for that show, and it didn't work out for me. From Jeffrey Jackson for $19.99. It is shocking how good Picard season 3 is, considering how bad the first 2 seasons were. It would be wrong to say that it's because the TNG crew is back. It's the writing that is making season 3 so good. Thank you, Jeffrey. That is very true.
Well said. Like I said, we all know how we feel about the first couple seasons of Picard, and a lot of the really good thing is Terry's able to come in, and you, Matt, and your team is able to come in and kind of look at what happened the last 2 seasons and go, okay, how can we build and get better even in the 3rd season and the final season. So it's kind of another way to continue to improve the process. And I think a big key is just, you've already said it multiple times, Terry just kind of being that the guy who knew where the path was and cut this and do this and using his love for Trek as a backdrop. And that seems like probably how you guys were able to kind of stay focused in the right direction, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think some of it, look, Trek, I think in my heart, Trek is for everybody, and everybody can like a different kind of Trek. And I am, it's like Star Wars. Like there are different kinds of Star Wars. You've got Mandalorian and you've got Andor, and I'm glad everyone's finding different things that they love. But when we got into season 3, we specifically knew we wanted this to be, we wanted it to be a love letter to all things Trek that we grew up with. And we wanted to be able to then build upon that and create something new as well. Like Terry was, again, the references that he gave, it was like, how do we take this back to the feeling that we had sitting in the theater when we saw Undiscovered Country for the first time, when we saw their names being written across, second star to the right. How did we feel when we were sitting watching episode 4, when we were seeing The Voyage Home in Wales for the first time? We wanted that sense, that we wanted that back. And it's all the little details that play into it. Does that answer your question? I hope so.
No, I think excellently, because that is it. The emotion, the feeling that you get, I think you guys captured that. Like, that's what I love about Star Trek, is feeling inspired and hopeful and, falling in love with my characters. And I think you guys allowed us to do that again. Before I get to our resident nitpicker, Matthew Kadish, I do want to add my favorite nitpick of the week was from Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark on DS9, and who came out when we get that beautiful shot of the Intrepid coming up, right? And of course, what does Armin say? He says, I didn't think there was oxygen in space. I don't know if you guys saw that tweet.
Yep. Terry answered it.
He did, right? What did he say, Rob? Did you see it?
He added a picture of Deep Space Nine on fire.
Yes, that was fantastic.
I mean, we don't know how the plasma they use in the future burns.
That's right. Maybe it's oxygen.
I mean, we don't know. I mean, to me, that when people say stuff like that, yeah, we have combustion, but how does space plasma work?
Right.
I mean, there has to be some kind of propellant taking place, because that's how rockets work. Right.
But is that what a starship is powered by? Impulse engines and a warp field, which is a warp bubble. So it's not like the warp bubble, you don't have exhaust coming out of the back of the warp nacelles.
Yeah, but what about the oxygen?
Did Armin ever complain about the sound being in space? Because that happens a lot in Star Trek.
Yeah.
What about the oxygen that's on fire that's venting from the ship? What if that's what you're saying? Oh no.
All right, we'll have to get a Star Trek scientist on. But
again, Matt, I'm glad we're complaining about, or we're talking about these things.
No, it's really cool. I love it.
But along those lines, Matt, do you actually have like physicists as kind of, I guess, unofficial consultants for the writing staff? Because I feel like in years past or generations past, it felt like there were a few more kind of people with lab coats on offering some contributions. Like, where does the fiction and storytelling and dramatic arts end, and where does the science begin when it comes to collaboration?
Honestly, it's a balance. There's just, if you were to stick to pure this is what would happen. Storytelling gets very hard. And I think in any medium you find that tries to stick to science concretely, you'll find that there's a lot of pseudoscience here and there. However, that being said, we try to always vet everything through our literal astrophysicist on staff, or not on staff, but on call. And she is, her name is Erin McDonald, Dr. Erin McDonald. And any science questions that we had, we called her, we emailed her, we texted her, and we said, how could X happen if we wanted to? How could Y happen? And things like, I'm trying to remember specifics off the top of my head, but it was like, is this a plausible thing that could happen? And she would shoot back yes or no, and depending on that, we would alter things to be as close as possible to real physics. because that's important, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's incredibly important. And so, yeah, Dr. Erin was. I talked to her a lot.
Yeah, I would have paid attention in college if I knew that was an actual job position.
Yeah, exactly.
Star Trek science advisor, Mr. Kadish. What is you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, so everyone's focusing a lot on the Ro Laren Picard dynamic in this show, but to me, there were two real standout scenes, and they both had to do with Shaw, because everyone knows I'm a Shaw simp. I simp for Shaw.
As are we all.
Yeah.
So there's a great scene. So after Shaw gets his captainship back, Picard comes on the bridge, and he's just kind of been informed about like everything that's going on, and he's like, we have to run away. And of course Shaw is like, dude, you just freaking stole my spaceship once before. It's like, you're not going to give me any context for like why you want to come in and take command again.
He's like, security, come on.
Yeah, he was like, security.
Stay off the bridge.
It's like, we literally just got through with you hijacking his ship and putting everyone in mortal danger, and you just want to come in and tell him to do something without any context. It's like, Picard, like I would have liked to have seen like a little bit of, okay, I know I just like screwed the pooch on like this other thing, but like listen to me now. But the best scene in this show, in this episode for me, was when Riker gets up and he's like, Shaw, if you don't believe us, at least believe your eyes. Yeah. And so Shaw turns and he looks at the Intrepid and he sees their weapons powering up. And at that moment, he realizes, is like, I can't play by the book anymore. This one thing that has been my cornerstone, that has guided me throughout my entire career, I can no longer rely on it. I have to believe what I'm actually seeing. And I have to go rogue just like these people I resent and don't like. And in that moment where he's like, LaForge, like, get ready to run and all that stuff. And he takes his seat and he's got these two legends on either side of him, but he's the guy in charge. I feel like that killer
shot at an angle of all three of their heads side by side.
The profile. I feel like that was like such a powerful moment that is just getting glossed over because of all the Ro Laren love in this thing. Like, to me, Shaw is the most intriguing and interesting and fun character that I've seen in Star Trek in decades. And every time he gets a chance to shine, this show just like freaking takes off in an entirely different direction for me. And that moment where he decides, I have to basically abandon the Starfleet manual and kind of become my own leader, was the most important moment in this episode for me.
That's so great for you to I mean, it's so gratifying to hear that, because you never know if people are getting what you're kind of throwing out there. And I remember a specific conversation, I think it was between Cindy Appel, Sean Tretta, and Terry. And forgive me, writers, if I'm forgetting who specifically was in there, but I'm almost positive that the three of them were talking about this. And it was like, we need a clear marker where the skeptic turns into the true believer, where he goes, I cannot deny this anymore. And oh my God, am I now one of you guys? and it was that, and Stashwick plays that moment so well, because it's both a reckoning on his part, and you feel that emotionally, but he brings that wry, oh God damn it, tone to it that just makes it sing. And that's
his complete irreverence for these two legendary characters. Like when they're in that turbo lift, and he's like, oh well, it's kind of the chicken and the egg scenario about saving the galaxy and putting it in danger in the first place, isn't it?
Right.
Where like he just starts listing off all the times they screwed up, and it's so rare to get that type of contrarian view from someone who's not a villain in the show, and I just love the fact that like he just like he looks at Picard, he's like, your poop don't stink, he's like, he doesn't care that this is Picard, like he's like, hey, I'm a captain too, I know what you went through, like I would have done it differently.
Absolutely.
So, he's my all-time new favorite character. I really hope he gets a spinoff.
Yeah, he's really wonderful. Yeah, we got some Michelle we got some Michelle questions here, so I'm going to read them all at the same time here. 200-watt studio for $2. He asked, how did you approach Michelle coming back? Additionally, just to make sure the point gets through, he also did it again and says, was Michelle easy to convince to come on board? And I don't know if this is his alt account or not, but another person asked a very similar question, Craig B. Hey, team, is there a story about how you got Forbes to return to the franchise character? What was the experience being able to go back to that story? So a lot of people want to know that. And Matt, I'm sure you're the guy to answer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's all Terry. That is the showrunner's responsibility. And, he did the same for Michelle, what he did for every single legacy character. He jumped on Zoom and he literally pitched the entire season front to back. Mm-hmm. Then he went in and pitched their character arc front to back and then said, this is what you're going to get to do. This is how long I need you for. I mean, when I tell you this man was exhausted, that doesn't even cover it. And he did that with Michelle. And when he said, okay, this is what we're going to do, right? And yeah, it's going to be Ro. He approached her reps. He jumped on Zoom with her and he pitched the whole thing, literally the whole thing, and said, this is why it's so important for you to come. This is why fans need this closure. And it's important to both, not just Jean-Luc Picard as a character, but to Ro Laren as a character, to get to explain the decisions she made and tell her side of the story that the original series just kind of dropped and never got back to, due to circumstances. And now we have the means to do that, and you get to do that if you're willing. And he convinced her to come back.
Wow, that's
awesome.
Great. That's such a great story, Robert. You have a story about Michelle Forbes. Didn't you live near her or something, or around her or something?
Yeah. I lived across the street. So back in 2007, up kind of by Lake Hollywood, underneath, there's kind of this secret area in Hollywood behind the 101 where you go up into the hills, and David and Kim Starzyk. David Starzyk has been an actor on a million different TV shows, and she lived in the neighborhood. And she would come over and, have dinner and drink wine or whatever. I would see her, and I always play it cool because actors don't, they experience things very differently than we as fans do. They don't know. And she and I did have some conversations about I think she regretted not being in Deep Space Nine, not being because she said to me, the way I remember it is, she said, I just didn't know. Like, she was in lots of things. She was in Escape from L.A. She was in the Brad Pitt Juliette Lewis movie with David Duchovny, California.
Yeah.
That was it. Dominic Sena directed that, and so she's had a really interesting career. But I always think that she's been. I mean, hell, I was watching on New Amsterdam dropped on Netflix, and Elizabeth, my girlfriend, was watching it. I'm like, oh my God, Michelle Forbes was on New Amsterdam as a recurring character. Yes, she was, but she's never become the household name. I mean, here she was starring opposite Brad Pitt, but she's had this really interesting career. And what I told her was I had heard about her coming back in Razor because a friend of mine's a VFX artist and told me, Admiral Kane's coming back. And I'm like, come on. And he was like, nope, there's this movie coming out. It's a TV movie. It's called Razor, and she's in it. And I told her that before she knew it. And she's like, no, my character died. And I'm like, we'll see, and then one day she was over. She's like, what else is going to happen in my career? She joked about that, but I think she's a terrific actress, but she's never, I mean, as far as I know, she's always been she's a character actress. She's always come in and done all these character turns, but like every actor wants to be a leading man, a leading lady, a leading person, that's what they want to do. And I don't think, and she's been in a lot of genre stuff too.
Yeah, she has.
I mean, I don't even think that she understands. Like, she was great as Kane in Galactica. She was great, But when these actors do these shows, they're not aware of conventions and fan love. And Stashwick is, because he's a total nerd like us. But most actors don't know or understand that, and sometimes it freaks them out. Like the whole idea of Comic-Con and people that will look. William Shatner never got it for the longest time. He's like, I was in this show that like it barely stayed on the air. Then it went into syndication. Then he's going to conventions. I mean, he went to Stratford. He's a classically trained Shakespearean actor. And then he falls into this ridiculous show in the 60s that never held on in the ratings the way it was supposed to. It was going to get canceled after 2 seasons. And so it's interesting when it comes to like, and now if you look at, especially Deep Space Nine, all the casting of all the guest casting, the recurring roles. I mean, Deep Space Nine, Frank Langella, Louise Fletcher. I mean, my God. And then people like Mark Alamo coming back after being a Cardassian in The Wounded in the 4th season of TNG. They bring him back and make him Gul Dukat. You know, and they brought back a lot of the same actors to play. How many times did Jeffrey Combs come back? I was surprised.
Stashwick was an Enterprise, wasn't he?
Yes, Stashwick. He played a Romulan and a Vulcan in the same episode. You know, and so I think that it's you know, it's a really interesting thing. So for her, actors just want great parts, and if you can send them a script and tell them that they matter, like if she were to just come on for, you know, but you guys wrote her. I mean, this incredible scene with Patrick Stewart. What actor wouldn't want to do that? I mean, I'm sure her people were a big pain in the ass. Like, she should get paid this amount, all that's. But I'm sure when she finally got there and could, I mean, you asked her to act, basically give a soliloquy to a Patrick Stewart. It was incredible. I mean,
she knocked it out of the park. And I remember watching Take After Take and going, oh my God, like, it's a gift. You know,
yeah, it's total. You know, and you got that with Stashwick, but even Kirk Acevedo, who played Kryn, he was fucking awesome. Like, he was, I mean,
good.
A Vulcan crime lord. We'd seen some shady Vulcans in like Deep Space Nine and on Gambit and stuff like that in the 7th season. But his thing, what does he say? Ergo. What is his line of dialogue? Is ergo? There's no reason why you can't apply.
Organized crime is logical.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, of course. I'm like, that is the greatest. That is the greatest thing in the world. You know, Utopia needs criminal elements. I know he wasn't on for very long, but that was awesome.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And I'm just like, there's gonna be a Kryn IDW comic. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, one of the great Star Trek novelists is gonna write a Kryn book. You know, Brunt and Kryn's early years living on the streets of Metalis, scraping out a meager living. I mean,
love that.
I want to see that.
when Terry, he walked in and he goes, what if it's a crime Vulcan? And it was like immediate. All of us were like, oh my God, yes. And then I read that line in the first draft of the script, and I think it was Chris Derrick who wrote that line. And it was like, Jesus, you just summarized everything that you need to know about this guy in one line.
Well, you know, and a lot of people they've cast as Vulcans over the years don't look like Vulcans.
Yes.
And he looks like a Vulcan.
Oh, he does.
You know, I mean, I thought he was, and his performance, his tonalities of his voice and the way he spoke, I'm like,
good.
He must have been having a ball doing this.
He really was.
There were a lot of 12 Monkey references in that scene.
Yeah. And again,
a great character actor.
Again, it speaks to Terry as a showrunner. You know, when you bring back, like, I love film directors that work with their company of players.
Same.
Like Woody Allen did that a lot in his 70s movies and stuff. And when you have showrunners that bring back actors to play in different roles, and you know what you're going to get from them, and I think there's something about that because the showrunner already knows, and so plays to that, like Stashwick and Kirk. It's Kirk Acevedo?
Yes,
right?
it is. Yeah.
And knowing that about him, and you give him the role, and I'm sure he probably didn't have to hear it from his agent. I'm sure Terry just called him up and said, "Yo."
Oh, I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did. Just when your agent calls, make the deal.
Yeah, it's like, just say yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure he was having a blast. That it was cold, but everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" You know. And I was excited both for 12 Monkeys, but if you've ever seen Band of Brothers,
oh yeah.
Oh my God, he's so good in it. And that's where I first saw him, and I was like, "Who is this guy with this crazy voice that just like hits you like a hammer?" Yeah, it was all he was.
And
incredible.
that whole scene with Worf and Raffi and all that, and him, I liked. That was great.
Yeah, that was a really fun thing to shoot. And when you're outside, you know, surrounded by this incredible set, you're just like, Jesus, how am I here?
Matt, would you go on certain days? Like, obviously, you were episode 8.
Yes.
So episode 8. Well, let me ask you a question. The bridge crew, the secondary bridge crew.
Yeah.
I love.
Oh,
and
I'm so glad.
I believe it's episode 8 where you see more of them. and
Maybe.
and
Where are we
and
going here?
but they the casting. I mean, I don't know if you can speak to this, but casting those actors, I really love them. You know, and I love the fact. What's it like to make sure that you write enough for them in, say, these long, protracted bridge scenes? And is that something like you want to make sure that your directors like Frakes will pick up those, you know, make sure you get those insert shots? Because from an editorial standpoint, having that kind of stuff to go to can sometimes save your ass when you're trying to get continuity. So having those, what's it like, one, to write those scenes, and two, to execute them?
It was a dream come true for me, at least, to write them. You're always fighting yourself because we never had, you know, even though the show is enormous, and I know this is going to sound hard to believe, you guys know, but it's hard to believe, you never have enough money to do everything you want.
Or time.
And you never have enough time. And so what are the first things you look to when your days are getting long, right? And the first AD comes to you and goes, look, we got to cut things. You don't cut from your leads, you cut from the secondary. And yet, you know, that's the great thing about Trek, is that banter, that patter, that cross talk, that's almost Altman-like talk, is something you can only find in Trek. You don't get it in Star Wars. You don't really get it in Marvel. You get that sort of nautical speak here. And so we would always have to fight to keep that in, because directors would be like, I don't need to pick this up, right? You're like, no, you really, please pick that up. You're going to want it. It was incredibly important to us.
It was great in episode 4, you know, in the end. I mean, I thought how everyone really kicked in. Everybody got to play their parts. And when you saw like Sydney, and she's bantering back and forth as the Titan was moving out, catching the wave. I mean, it was great how you guys got all that. And you know, I'm wondering, is that something Terry makes sure of? Like, is he?
Absolutely.
So for people that don't understand, when you're making a TV show, you're usually locked into a 12-hour day, you know, and that's all you, and if you go over 12 hours, you're into second meal, you're into penalties, and it's incredibly expensive.
Oh yeah.
So
that 12 hours includes a 1-hour lunch.
Yeah, and it includes a 1-hour lunch. And so, you know, usually on a day you get to set 6:30 and maybe you start at 7. And before you get your first shot off, depending on how elaborate the scenes are, the grip and electric crew, you have to light the set. You might have left things from the night before and be ready to go, especially that's why working on a bottle show and working on standing sets is so crucially important. And it really allows you a little bit more time to get a little bit more elaborate, as opposed to being on a location or being somewhere else.
Yeah.
And is Terry there to make sure that I never asked him this, to pick up the shots with those actors to make sure you have them?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the showrunner is pulled in a million different ways, but I will say, and I was on set for a chunk of it, you know, because the writers were cranking away on the later scripts, and Terry, almost without fail, never missed morning rehearsal. And I would always get to ask my questions, and if he couldn't make it, Sean Tretta was there, and if Sean Tretta wasn't there, Chris Monfett was there, you know, but for the most part, it was Terry, and I would go, okay, Terry, here's a couple questions. And he would go to the directors, or he would go to the actors and go, this is the meat of the scene. This is what I want. This is how it should feel. You know, and that's in addition to what we call the tone meeting, where the showrunner goes through the entire episode, page by page, with the entire production crew and the director, telling them exactly what he wants in every scene and how it should feel. You know, I think a lot of showrunners concentrate on the technical aspects of it at that stage. But what I've seen Terry do differently, and probably better than anyone I've ever seen, is tone up an episode. This is what I want this scene to feel like, guys. So whatever you need to do, because, you know, he doesn't presume to know the DP's job. He trusts them. That's why he hired them. But he goes, I want this to feel like Blade Runner. I want this to feel like Hunt for October, and this paranoia and this sense, you know, chiaroscuro lighting, and give me depth of field here. Like, all those things go into, and this is, by the way, after a million production meetings.
Yeah.
So yes, he is, he is there to sort of wind the toy in the morning, and then he goes, okay, you know, you have the con, and you're watching every shot, chiming in when you need to. And he's also watching on what we call Q-Take, which is a live stream. And he's watching when he can while taking meetings at the same time.
Yeah.
And I would be getting texts going, hey, can you, that light's swinging kind of fast. Looks like disco. Can you like not the show Discovery, but like a little disco? Can you slow it down a little bit? And you're like, Roger that, copy that. So yes, I mean that, and whenever there was a question on set, whenever I was like, I wasn't sure, should I zig or should I zag? You jump on the phone and you go, hey man, what do you want to do? Does Jack have his holster here? Is the phaser in it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, production. A lot of people don't understand. Even when you're doing a lot of times briefing room scenes or favorite scenes of Star Trek fans.
Yeah,
but those are tough because
so hard.
To get those in, you have to shoot everybody,
right?
And those, each time you move that camera, it's a different setup. And sometimes you'll keep it from maybe go from a 2-shot into a single or something. You can do that too. But you also want to have edit points, so you can go anywhere. And if you need to restructure something, the way those scenes are shot is crucial.
Absolutely.
And those can take a long time. And it's the same actor, and they're doing the same scene over and over again. And you can wind up in the weeds. That's why on a TV show, your first AD, well, actually on a movie too, but your first AD, the first AD is really in television the most powerful person on the set.
Absolutely. We had a fantastic one, Maria Mantis, who is one of the first, she is probably the best first ADs I've ever worked with. And she worked on the show I just came off of actually as well. And thank God they have her. But she kept the set moving on her episodes. And she would, because I think people don't realize, like, okay, when you cut from, a single on Picard, we call it, one shot on Picard, and you're facing left to right. That's one lighting setup. Now, if I want to do the reverse on Riker, I got to move all the lights here and put them over here. And that takes 45 minutes.
Or, if you're on it, or you shoot from person to person, and sometimes a person doesn't chime in until halfway into a scene.
Right.
And you have to decide, are you going to run the whole scene or just pick up that person's lines? And that's when you say the first AD in the morning as a director, you go, okay, look, here's the scene we're going to shoot. You tell your first AD as a director, you'd say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So the first AD and your DP are like, okay, how are we going to get that in the fastest amount of time?
Exactly.
And then they decide, you hang back, you bring your actors out, you block the scene with the actors, then they go away.
Yes.
And then you have your grip and electric department come in along with your DP and the first AD, and they figure out, okay, how are we going to do this?
Exactly.
And it's in a way, it is kind of science, and you're fighting time, and you might only get 10 minutes to shoot something, but it takes an hour and it's really hard. A lot of people don't understand that aspect. And with television, how many days were you shooting? 8 days?
No, we were shooting. So we did what we call block shooting, which means we were shooting 2 episodes simultaneously. And so one shot can be from episode 3, and literally the next shot is from but the next scene is from episode 4.
And that's why you had directors working on 2 episodes.
No, well, we only had one. Yeah, that's why we had directors on 2. Exactly, because they were shooting. They try to keep, the first AD tries to keep things as sequential as they can, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Wow, that makes it exponentially more difficult, especially when you're dealing with acting and the tone of a scene.
Exactly.
But it makes sense because when you're in the same rooms. Wow.
You just got to save time that way because you don't have enough time to do everything you want traditionally. Wow. And a lot of shows are doing that these days. But this I got to say is exponentially harder when you're dealing with a mystery, because you have to keep track of everything you got to know where the characters are coming from and where they're going before you even block the scene, because so many things just, as need to be fixed in blocking, or notes given in blocking, because you don't want to get down the road and go, oh crap, we forgot they're coming from X and they should be sweaty and panicked, and we're playing it like everything's fine.
And that's why those cutaways to the bridge crew are always helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a great opportunity for us to give a plug. I got to plug Terry Matalas here because, you know, what you guys have given us is amazing. But, you know, there's a lot of things that are said about, you know, Alex Kurtzman, who runs Star Trek. But we got to say this. He brought Terry Matalas in and he's given us this. Yes. And we have to be grateful the fact that that's happened. Now, that said, Alex, if you're watching, or anybody at Paramount Studios, we want more Star Trek made by Terry Matalas and his excellent team like Matt here and Chris, who we had on last week. The fans are overwhelmingly loving the season, and we know by the end of it, they're absolutely going to love it. If you as well want to support future Terry Matalas Star Trek, we have a thing over here you can sign. Petition. And that's at terrytrek.com. Go over there, sign the petition. And we're going to keep putting this in front of the faces of people at over at Paramount because, you know, you guys are ready. You guys want to do more Star Trek. We've heard it from Terry. We've heard it from Chris. And I've heard you say it as well. Like, you guys are ready. Let's go. Right? You know, so
Absolutely.
We're just waiting on somebody.
We got a super chat from Alexander McCarthy. He says, Red Letter Media made a good point about Star Trek's uniqueness. The danger comes from outside, and the crew has to work together to combat it. Will we see Trek step away from this modern trend of internal drama? ? Depends on who's telling the story, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, there is an external threat here.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, it is. This isn't an internal. Yeah. So thank you, Alexander, for that. But definitely, this definitely isn't an internal drama. There are elements of internal drama. I mean, we've got the strife that's happening to the characters between Riker and Picard and things like that. But the actual, it's a case of someone coming in against the Federation.
I mean, if you look at Star Trek VI, that was an actual internal. You had Klingons, Romulans, and Federation officers conspiring to keep the conflict between the three powers going.
Yep.
You know, so that was an internal. Whereas this, you know, the characters, and when you think about it, they stumbled on something. I mean, Riker and Picard literally stumbled into all this. They just thought they were going to help Beverly.
Right. Exactly.
They didn't know.
This was sort of an accident, as happens to them a lot.
Yeah. With the egg. We got a couple more statements here and a question from Danny. I want to see a Captain Shaw series after this. Everyone does.
Everybody does. Let's throw Kate. I think he has a comment about something like that he wanted to say, right, Matt?
Well, actually, I wanted to ask Matt a question, and I don't want to come off as nitpicky, but this is just how my brain works when I'm
here we go.
Watching
up, everybody. Here we go.
So Ro Laren comes on board, and she's been kind of the one spearheading this investigation into the strange goings-on of potential changelings. Like, she's tracked 12 incidences across Starfleet. Mm-hmm. She has suspicions that people in Starfleet have been compromised positions, and she's on the Intrepid, and she kind of suspects that, you know, the Intrepid is compromised too. And when she goes on the Titan, she's trying to determine whether or not Picard is compromised and this crew. And so she basically has the Titan crew transferring to the Intrepid while this investigation is going on. And at the end, when she, sacrifices herself to, kind of cripple the Intrepid to give the Titan a chance to go, I'm sitting there and I'm like, so did she just put all the Titan's crew in jeopardy, having transferred them on there, not just from, destroying that engine, but leaving them with potential changelings who are now seeing them as a threat? Right. Why wouldn't she just keep the entire crew on the Titan? Because she knows that the Titan kind of worked out who was a changeling and who wasn't already. So I was just wondering if there was any thought given to that, or because when I'm watching the episode, I'm like, oh, did they just screw over the Titan crew, especially with with the Titan just running away and leaving them with the bad guys? Yeah. No, somebody asked that question, and I think it came down to somebody in the writers' room asked that question as we were breaking it, and I think the answer is kind of twofold. It depends on sort of your point of view, that's why she aimed the shuttle, where she did, because she knew she would cripple it, but not endanger the lives of the people aboard. And she also knows that, that the changelings know that those people, that crew, don't know who they are yet.
And so there's a chance that maybe they could survive, right? As opposed to just slamming into the ship and blowing them all up. Then you kind of just end their lives right away.
She didn't know she was going to have a bomb on board either.
Exactly. That's the other thing.
That's true.
You know, I mean, and I think that I don't want to say anything, but it's remember they said in Homefront and Paradise Lost in Deep Space Nine that there were only 4 changelings on Earth during the Dominion War, and they were able to cause all those problems. Mm-hmm. Just 4.
Well, and we also have to get down to the idea, and I know that this is some nitpicky stuff from people, but you have to get down to the idea that the Titan's about to go on its own little adventure. And you really can't have a crew of 400 people on this adventure going on. And so it makes sense that there's people in trouble, right? So Picard and Riker, possible mutiny. How much is Shaw involved in that? So they don't know. So maybe they're moving the crew because they don't know how much the leadership's going to be in trouble. And so maybe they've taken control of the situation. Now we know they're trying to get Jack, obviously. But so I felt like it was kind of it didn't take me out of it all. It made sense actually to me.
Yeah,
and they also don't know who
Terry. Keep watching because
they also don't know where the Shrike came from.
Right.
Yeah. You know, they don't know anything about are the people on the Shrike. Who are they? They don't know yet.
Right.
So there's a bigger picture happening too.
Well, a good time to ask this question. We do have a super chat about changelings. I'm sorry, I just lost it. My bad. Oh, here we go.
I will also just to real quick interject.
Go ahead.
We are only 5 in, and my hope is that I'd like to think that once the entire story plays out, that people will be able to come back and look back at things and really see them through a different lens once they have all the information.
I will say this, Matt, real quick.
Yeah.
So I watch all the Star Trek series that come out. This is the first time I've actually gone back and rewatched episodes from a Star Trek season since since OG Trek. So kudos to you guys because I'm actually going back. I've rewatched all 5 episodes of Picard season 3 at least 3 times.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And I have not done that. I have not done that since since probably Enterprise was on the air. So kudos to you guys because it's so nice to have a Star Trek show I can actually enjoy and go back and start spotting things and start theorizing and theory crafting and nerding out with other fellow Star Trek fans.
I love that. And I love...
We've been missing that for years.
I love questions like that because it means you care, right? It means you sincerely care and you love it so much that you want to know the answers to these things. And that's really cool to me. And to anyone out there who wants Terry to show run another one of these and to get the band back together, what's going to really matter are numbers, right? That's what CBS looks at. They need the numbers to justify the cost, to justify the headaches and the heartaches of putting something like this together to them. So watch it again, watch it after that, tell your friends, tell your family, because unfortunately we live in, it's show business and the business side of it is very important.
So we got a super chat from Ryan West. Ryan West. Was the idea of having changelings invade the Federation meant to be a wink wink to the audience, explaining why the Federation Starfleet was so weird in the first 2 seasons? I don't think that's
Sure. Well, let's say that.
Headcanon. If that's your headcanon, go with it.
That makes you feel better. Yeah.
Sheer effing hubris. She was a changeling the whole time.
We got a super chat from Echo Base Network. Thank you, guys. Can anyone get in touch with Lucasfilm and get them to hire Terry Matalas so he can save Star Wars next? I know he's a big Star Wars fan, and Disney Star Wars is not in a good place right now.
We're not ready to let him go for the next few years.
Sorry, guys. We're keeping Terry for a while, okay? Star Wars can deal with its own problems.
You had your chance, Star Wars.
Yeah. We also got a super chat from Dustin Cole. Nothing to add. Just enjoying the chat and wanted to chip in my part for a few bucks to keep up the good work. Y'all, P.S. Matt, I love your work. And so.
Very kind of you.
Thank you, Dustin. That means a lot. Thank you. Well, okay. So, James, you haven't got to say anything in a while. Do you have anything you wanted to ask?
I have not seen the next 5 episodes, so I don't know who lives or dies. But Matt, let's say Terry were to get the band back together, or let's say perhaps even you were running your own show, Star Trek Titan, at some point. Who's going to be on the crew without giving anything away that we've kind of fallen in love with. Because as much as I love seeing the Next Generation crew, what's blown my mind this season is how many new characters I'm getting emotionally invested in, and I would be totally on board watching future adventures. So
Crash
yeah,
and
what's your
Forge,
dream crew in the future
That's
seasons?
a loaded question, James. Okay, Matt, get ready to tiptoe around this answer.
No, yeah, no.
Dance across those laser beams.
I actually won't have to because I can't actually. There's nothing I can say here that would be safe.
Yeah.
Because there's so much left to go.
Gotcha.
And my my advice, especially for this week, like watch sooner rather than later because there's some doozies, man, coming up. And I knew it was coming. I was freaking out the first time I saw it.
Can I ask real quick, what, in your opinion, do the CBS brass need to see to do another Star Trek spinoff series? Like, what would convince them it's like that this would be a good idea?
And you know what? I venture to guess because before I was a writer, I was an exec for many years. And what they usually look for are two metrics. One, are the numbers better than most of the shows in the same franchise? That's the big thing. You want to know that your numbers are rock solid and close to the top. That way they can get subscribers, new subscribers, especially now, less so advertisers, but I think that may change. Two, they need to see those numbers grow from week to week. So, it's a little like the old model, Robert, you'll remember, right? Like if a show lost an audience percentage of 50% or more between week 1 and 2, they were pretty much dead in the water.
Yeah. And we've seen a lot of like the numbers we just saw on Last of Us, for instance. HBO's Last of Us skyrocketed.
Yes.
The numbers for episode 9 were giant compared to it grew its audience steadily every week. And I think it all comes down to that. It seems silly, but that metric is all that like you pointed out, that the execs and the network looks at that and says, oh, this show worked and word of mouth brought in more audience, and that's all they can look at nowadays. I mean, there are the Nielsen ratings. I mean, they literally can see it in real time now too.
Yeah.
It used to be, well, we have to wait for the Nielsen reports to come out, but now it's like YouTube. You can literally watch your real time metrics, and they do the same thing. And you've got, especially now across multiple platforms, because you can have Paramount Plus. I actually watch through Amazon because I like it. It's just a better, more stable way to watch the show. And they're getting these. I don't know where else. I think, does Picard season 3 only air on Paramount Plus? I think it might.
Yeah,
but
I
if you,
think it's part of the
yeah, but I think if you
It's
can, because you can get
exclusive,
you can get Paramount Plus through Amazon, and
Yeah.
that's so. But they know, they know how many people are watching, and then so that's really the only way that you can convince people.
Can I ask, is licensing still like a big part of the decision-making process at Paramount? Because like if we all come in and say like we want the Titan miniatures, we want Captain Shaw dolls, it's like, would they be like, oh, okay, we can make a whole new license for this, and that would justify it,
Can I have a Captain Shaw body pillow? Massive body pillow.
I'm texting Stan
with
right
Todd's
now.
face right at the top.
We can have Todd come to your house.
I already asked him. He said no.
Oh, no.
There are plans afoot for certain. I can't say what they are, but there are plans afoot for certain items. I mean, I'm a huge model kit builder. I'd love to see Round 2 make a 1/350th scale Constitution 3 class of ship.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
I
And
want
then Master Replicas came back, and they're selling the Eagle Moss kits, and their website went live again yesterday. And I wanted to get the XL Deep Space Nine, and by the time I got there, I forgot it. It was gone.
Yeah.
So the Eagle Moss, all those. A lot of the I think all the XL things, like the Prometheus, there were, because that ship I just showed you, this is one of their XL versions. And I love these these things are chunky,
So good.
die-cast. They're awesome. And hopefully the pieces for the Enterprise deal start up again, because I'm $1,000 in that. But I think it comes down to, like, I think the Migos Star Trek figures are selling, and then you got the Playmobil Enterprise and now the Playmobil Bird of Prey.
Yeah.
So it's hard,
and the more noise you make, the better. Honestly, it has to be a roar for it to be worth it, and for them to think they can turn a profit. So make as much noise as you can. We'd love to come back. Terry wants to get the band back together. I've heard some of his ideas, of which there are many, and they're pretty awesome. I'm just like, I want to say more, but I can't.
Yeah.
We got a couple more super chats to fill it in. From Jeremy Snyder, he says, "No 7 and 9 inflatables." No, Jeremy, no. Shame on you.
Naughty.
Wait, you just said Captain Shaw inflatable. Come on.
No, I said body pillow. It's a different thing.
Oh God,
It's totally different.
in our minds, we all saw the same thing though. But that's fine.
That was the purpose. Paul Martinez, Picard season 4? ? We already answered that. We're hoping. Let's get the word out.
Paul.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Picard season 3, according to Foxhound, thank you, Foxhound, is trending #1 in the UK
awesome.
on Amazon Prime. That is fantastic.
Well, that's the news that they need to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly the news right there. Yeah.
Also
because
from Foxhound. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
it takes, like, I think the metric that they use, they look at the 24-hour overnights, and then they look at the 1 weeks, I think, and then they look. I think the big one is the 1 month. I think.
Yeah.
I see.
What's interesting about this show, though, Matt, is that so many people, now that we're 5 episodes in, they're staying up until midnight so they can watch the episode and not get it spoiled the next day on social media for them. I know this is the bane of my existence. I have to wait until that clock strikes 12 so I can start watching. So, like, the surprises aren't spoiled for me. It's terrible. I hate it.
It's 3 a.m. on the East Coast. Yeah.
Everyone yelling at us about putting Ro in the thumbnail. It's been like 4 days, guys. Watch the show, okay?
But yeah, man, once I noticed that people were starting to stay up, I started staying on Twitter past midnight, and I'm a very, very tired man on Thursday morning.
From Foxhound 499, thank you, Foxhound, again. No word of a Lie season 3 has brought disillusioned hardcore Trek fans back to the franchise. Phenomenal work, Matt and team.
Well, that's
Thank you,
very
sir.
kind. And I want to, if I can, shout out the other writers who I learned so much from. I'm what they call a mid-level writer. I am kind of midway up that ladder, and I learned so much from every single one of them. And we went through the war together because this was such a hard show to make. Sean Tretta, who was just a mensch on set and taught me how to just watch a scene and give notes, to Chris Monfett, who is a idea machine. I've never seen anyone quicker with the big high concept ideas, and the way he can turn a phrase and write poetry in scene. Like, a lot of those scenes that you're like, wow, that was amazing wording. It's probably Chris. It's a lot of it's Chris in his episodes, and then Cindy Appel, who is so clever and would give us these zingers. Like, a lot of those Worf zingers in 5, they're hers, and they're so good. Like, they're just so good. And then Jane Maggs, who puts heart into her into every scene she writes, and you'll see it coming up. She does phenomenal work in her solo episodes. And then Chris Derrick and Kylie Rossiter, who were Johnny on the Spot. And when you're going through the mud, you want people who are like, yes, I'll do that, give me more. And they were those. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to
That's awesome.
to thank all of them, because they're all amazing human beings.
And hopefully we can have them on the show at some point and ask them the question I'm about to ask you from Journey's End. Matt, if you were personally given the keys to Trek, where would you like to see Star Trek go next? Just for fun, exclude a Captain Shaw series.
I would take those keys and I would hand them to Terry and go, let's go wherever you want to go.
I think
honestly, that's what I would. I genuinely mean that. I would be like, let's figure this out.
I mean, it can't be. It cannot be a coincidence that you Chris, everybody we've had on, every actor, every legacy actor that's been on the show, they constantly are always saying, Terry, Terry, Terry. They're thankful. They're grateful. I mean, listen, it's not a coincidence, guys. Like, I mean, if you hear something over and over again, there's truth there. So thank you, Matt, for saying that.
No, of course. I know I sound like a broken record, and I'll tell you this story really quick. Sometimes what happens to writers, especially minority writers, is that you are made to repeat levels. You know, you repeat every job you take, you're supposed to, like in the old days, if you were a story editor, you went to what's called executive story editor, you jump levels. That's not the case anymore. Some minority writers are made to repeat 3 or 4 times. You know, I'm thankful that I only had to repeat twice because CBS was like, well, you know, he came off Leverage. It's kind of a lower budget show. We think he should be the same level coming into our season. And I was like, really, guys? But they kind of have you over a barrel, and they know it because who's not going to take the deal to write track?
Right.
Season 3, Terry goes, I'm going to make this whole. I can't tell you more. Just trust me. If you trust me and you come with me on this journey, I will make you whole. And what he did is he bumped me up mid-season, and he made me the level that I was supposed to be from episodes 6 through 10. So my dream, I'm actually getting emotional. My dream of being in the fancy credits on Star Trek is because Terry fulfilled his promise. And he didn't have to do that, guys. Like, this is a rarity. Let me tell you, this is really, really rare. And he made me whole. And for that, among all the other things, I will always be grateful.
That's a huge testament to him and the kind of person he is in the business, because, as you know, that doesn't happen a lot.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it becomes apparent just to get to know him even a little bit, as I have. No, I barely know him really, but he's an incredible guy.
Yeah, he is. He really is.
I got some hard questions for you, and feel free to say no comment if it's too hard to answer. From Corsair Raven for $5. Hi, y'all. Good job on Picard Season 3. I really hope, however, it doesn't stir toward Discovery's The Burn plot line. That's less of a question, more of a statement, but...
Hey, you guys, don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, another question. Yeah, it doesn't. You're fine. Hey, Matt, Star Trek Enterprise explained the Klingon look with a plausible story. If given the task of explaining the disco Klingon look...
Sorry about that.
Oh,
what's going on in your pants, Robert?
I thought I was having a stroke right there. I was like, this is the end for me.
That was new mommy Tallulah. She figured out a way to open the door to the Robservatory here and busted her way in.
Horrible.
So, yeah. So I apologize.
One more try.
She's an
I
Irish
don't like dogs on the bridge.
That's so cute.
From Good Tea House, thank you. He says, hey, Matt, Star Trek Enterprise explained the Klingon look with a plausible story. Referring to TOS to TNG, right? If given the task of explaining the disco Klingon look, tying it to canon, could you and Picard Season 3 writers pull it off? ?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think so. I think it would be, I know some people like that look. That wasn't for me, but I think we could find out.
Hold on one second.
With those, with this group of writers, we could find, a reason. I don't know. I think they're, you can never please everybody, but I would hope we could spitball ideas and come up with solutions.
My headcanon is that they're from a hyper religious sect that broke off from the main, genetic timeline like 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And, they keep their head shaved and like that. It's over an evolutionary branch because they're so religious.
Yeah. I think that would be the solution, honestly. Well, the first place my head goes is there's a bit of time that passes and in that time is a solution, most likely.
Yeah.
But dramatically, you always need to be able to understand your actors and the words they're expressing. And imagine Worf, if he was wearing so many prosthetics, he couldn't pronounce his dialogue. Yeah. That was
that's funny. I saw bloopers recently from TNG where he had a really hard time with the teeth. And so every scene would start off with him having to get used to the teeth again. And he would say the craziest stuff. Like he called the lift, like sugar lift. And someone was like, I'm sorry. He's like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what. And when Michael Dorn actually gets angry on set, it was like Worf, but like really Worf, you know? He's like, one time Picard was telling him, was talking to the whole crew in the ready room, and he references Worf, but you can tell that Worf is like fiddling with his prosthetics. He's like this, so he's not paying attention. He goes,
uncomfortable, so unhappy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm talking to you, Commander Worf. He's like, oh, I love Michael Dorn, man. He's so great.
He is, by the way, one of the funniest guys you will ever meet.
Oh yeah,
his comedic timing is incredible, and he was a consummate pro, and he cares so much about protecting Worf, and I love that about him. He was just a delight. Sorry, Shane.
No, I love that you said that, because people want to hear as much as they can about these guys. There's so much we don't know. It was funny. And Robert mentioned it earlier. He was talking about how some of these actors don't really realize, you know, how what they mean to the show, what they mean to the fans. I was watching the Shuttle podcast, which shout out to Connor Trenier and Dominic Keating.
That's a great podcast, by the way.
It really is such a great show. Dominic was talking. Connor Trenier was talking about how he didn't even like Star Trek. And all of a sudden, when they started doing this podcast, he had to do research on the characters, and he's found himself like now finally, after all these years, falling in love with Star Trek, like all iterations of it, like TNG and even his own show and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And I just wonder, when you guys are working with the actors, it feels like these guys have an appreciation for where they've been and where they've come from. Do you get that sense that you know, they're close? I know they have things happen on camera. Do you get that sense from them that they appreciate, you know, how the fans feel about them?
Absolutely. Yeah, because they know their characters better than anyone, right? Even us. They know them inside and out, and they know how that character would react because they've had 30 years to live in their shoes. And they are very protective about them, and they were always sort of that, you know, that kind of early warning signal when they're like, hey, this word doesn't sound quite right, and you kind of look at it and you're like, oh my god, you're right, this doesn't quite sound correct. What do you want to change it to? It didn't happen often, but we appreciated it when they would kind of nudge on something, and you always want them to perform something that feels true to them because it's just a better performance. And so Terry was never a word perfect guy, unless it really, really mattered. You know, like clue trail stuff, that kind of really matters because everything's got to connect and has been meticulously planned out. But they were the stewards of their characters, and we trusted them when they would speak up like that. And they were just a joy. You know, they say don't meet your heroes. In this case, I was so... Once the sheen wears off and you're just kind of stuttering through your words and you can't quite speak, you learn that they're all just incredible people. You know, someone like Frakes, who I would not have made it through production without him. His set energy, his enthusiasm, his humor. He would shout down from the top of the bridge whenever he had a question. He would just shout, "Hey, scribe," and I would come running. And he knew, and I would start calling him the thespian.
The artist is working.
Yeah, exactly. But he was so kind, and he would share war stories about, you know, James Horner, not James Horner, sorry, Jared Goldsmith. You know, what it was like working with him on First Contact, and what it was like to work, you know, with this scene and that scene, and what were the old days like. And, yeah, it was just kind of a thrill, and just to see how damn talented all of them really are.
Can I piggyback off that? I loved seeing Jonathan Frakes, his transition to filmmaker from his character. Do you see any current cast members making that jump, and whatever iterations of Star Trek might be coming our way, but which actors seem to be like chomping at the bit, craving the opportunity to be a filmmaker in the world of Star Trek?
That's a good question.
Not that I would want to rearrange the team. I mean, you assembled an incredible dance of writers and directors, but it always is interesting seeing which actor, like Leonard Nimoy, obviously did a very good job of making the jump.
Yeah, honestly, I think everyone was so focused and dialed in that I don't know that we had those conversations. I know that, Ed Spaliers is thinking about other facets he might want to do, potentially writing. I don't know about directing. I don't know if I had that conversation with him. But no, Frakes is really the only one, to my memory anyway, that was like, I love being on both sides of the camera. And he may even love directing more. I'm not sure. But
yeah, I watched an interview that actually Robert recommended where he was speaking at length about the joy and the excitement of shooting on the bridge. A lot of directors feel a little at a loss as to how to stage those scenes properly. But he said, no, that's where all the action takes place. That's like the meat of the show. And it was just incredibly inspiring to hear him talking about his approach to directing.
Well,
oh yeah,
Rick Berman put him through hell, made him go to like Paramount University because he had gone and expressed that he wanted to direct. And Berman said, he tells this story in the documentaries we made for the TNG Blu-rays, but how he had to do everything. He had to go to editorial sessions. He had to go to writer's room meetings. And it took a year before Berman basically said, okay, and because Berman thought he would go away. And it was, Frakes will tell you, it was his wife, Jeannie Francis, Laura of Luke and Laura fame, on General Hospital, that it was her. She told him, no, he thinks you're going to quit. Just stick with it and you'll end up directing.
Oh, wow.
And that's how he got his first episode was that he directed was The Offspring, the episode with Lal in the third season. Yeah. And he didn't know what script he was going to get, and that was the first episode that he was able to do.
Rob, can I ask you a question real quick? Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, of course.
No, please.
Do you think that because we don't have that type of mentorship program anymore where you have to go through Paramount University and learn the ropes of...
I mean, they called it that. There wasn't a real Paramount.
No, I used to work at Paramount. I know that you were kind of like just generalizing it. But I mean, like there used to be like a system in which people would come up and learn the craft and then be put into positions of importance. And it seems like nowadays it's just like people are being put in positions of importance that just don't know what they're doing. And that's why we're getting such substandard fare consistently. Do you think that we need to kind of go back to that earn your ropes type thing?
Look, I started out as a PA, and I think that one of the most valuable things that I ever did was start out as a PA. I worked in the art department on low budget horror films for New Line, and it was because we were on set. We started really at the beginning because we were the art department, so we were building the sets, and then we were there every day. And it was an incredible experience to see what goes on. Nowadays, everybody wants to start out as a producer. And the thing is, we were talking earlier in this podcast about how a day is made on television. Now, if you can get a job as a PA on a TV show and work your way up, and if you're good at what you do and you're pleasant to work with, you get an invaluable education. And I think, a lot of people now, they'll make like one independent movie and then suddenly they're directing a $200 million studio picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly problematic for the industry as a whole, because, the writers, you were talking about it, Matt, I mean, writers work their way up to they start out as writers assistants. Yes. I mean, I know so many TV writers that began as writers assistants, like Derek Hughes was an assistant. Yeah. Derek and Ben wrote a comic book that I self-published 15 years ago, or almost 20 years ago now. And Derek started, I want to say he started working as a writer's assistant on Andromeda. And then, he works his way up. Now he's an EP, but you put in the time that you're looking at almost 20 years. Ben and Derek, and Ben Rabb was a writer for DC. He was writing comic books before that. And especially for TV writers, you come up and you learn how a show is made. And then being in a writer's room is a skill unto itself. And then being able to literally, how do you get in a room with people and collaborate effectively? Mm-hmm. Like Matt was saying, that is an art form, because there's a lot of people there. And when you're dealing with people that are really smart, and you got to hold your own, you got to be personable, you got to be nice, you have to be able to convey ideas and listen to other people's ideas. It's a skill, man. And the people that survive it to answer your question, yes. I think it's the entertainment business now, and there's more money at stake than ever before. And yet people, I think, know, although TV writers, in my experience, they know a lot more than a lot of people, because you've been on a path. You were an executive, and then you were a writer, and you've worked your way up. You've seen it all. And Terry began as a production associate on. He's got a credit on Broken Bow, the pilot for Enterprise. That was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
So and working for Burnett, and before that, he was on Deep Space Nine in the post-production department.
And Voyager, yep.
And Voyager with Brannon.
Yeah, it's one of the last, I think, trade crafts where to do it, you really need to be around it. It's hard to. Yeah. I would say it's impossible to learn true TV writing, producing without being in the room. I started out with. I was an intern in 1999. I want to say, and then I was an intern again in 2000, and then was an assistant. And then I got promoted to executive. But when I wanted to write, I realized I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I busted myself back down to writer's assistant after 12 plus years.
Wow, that's ballsy.
It was the scariest thing I'd ever done in my life. And I credit my wife for telling me, look, in 10 years, are you going to regret that you failed? Or are you going to regret you never tried? And I was like, God damn it. You're right again. And I'm so thankful that I did that, because I think I would have flamed out had I not been a writer's assistant for a couple of years, because I wouldn't have known room dynamics, and I wouldn't have known the format of a writer's room.
And you can see it. I mean, the shows that we have today, like I've only worked on a small TV shows as a director and the editor of my episodes, but the writer's room, to me, I mean, I have so many friends that tell me these stories of all different kinds of, and writer's rooms can be a hellish place. Yeah. But when you have a writer's room that really works, and I think you see it in the finished product, and the stories that you were telling just now, I mean, it all comes down to what kind of a showrunner and what kind of a person is that showrunner.
Yes. Exactly.
And relying on a team. A great writing staff is an invaluable team of people that it's like having the Avengers. A great writing staff is having a group dynamic that works.
Yeah.
And you want different kinds of people that can synergistically work together.
Yeah, and different skills, right? Not everyone's going to, if you all have the same skill, well, I don't know. It's like using the same tool to build a building. Like you don't, you need more than a welder.
Right. Yeah. Right. You need more than a hammer.
You need more than a hammer. Exactly. And you are a quiver of arrows, and every arrow does something different. You are Hawkeye's arrows. And
hey man, I got a super chat from Sangeetha Sivandan. And I really hope that I said your name correctly, Sangeetha. Thank you for the super chat. Hey Matt, who's your favorite Picard season 3 character and fave all-time character? Thanks for the great work to the whole team. The Elcar's porn at the end credits, though. Chef's kiss.
Oh man, that's awesome. Oh boy, you're gonna make me choose. I love them all.
All right, you think about that, and I'm gonna read some more super chats. Okay.
Let me see.
We got a super chat from George Peter Gattis. Picard season 3 is as great as STM 6 and ST Continues Sulu episodes. I never got into Star Trek Continues, but I heard good things. Also from Son of John, love you guys. I just wanted to say that I hope Enterprise F is in the Picard season 3 and not just a tease. Live long and prosper. We'll see, won't we? I can't say anything about that. Mr. Burns for $5. Rose sacrifice raises the stakes for the season, and as a fellow Shaw simp, looking out. Hashtag Shaw simps. I hope we get a Star Trek Titan spinoff, so long as TM is the showrunner. I hear that, Mr. Burns.
Amen. Honestly, I think it's a tie between. It is a true tie this season.
Here we go.
Between Seven and Shaw.
Between Seven and Shaw.
Yeah.
Well, so I would have to make that decision based on which one has a body pillow.
Yeah, exactly.
They could be the Kirk and Spock of a new show, given enough time to continue working together. So yeah.
So
They're
Sangeeta, that was the answer. He said it's a toss-up between Seven and Shaw.
Oh,
And
God
who's your
damn it.
favorite
See,
all time?
So now I'm throwing Riker in that mix too. See, I'm gonna keep going. Like I'm just gonna list everybody.
You just like them all. Okay.
I just like them all. I think my all-time favorite, like, and it's only because I grew up with them. It'd probably be Kirk, Spock, and Bones.
Yeah,
'Cause I grew up with
that's the only right answer. Just so you know, you got it.
Right.
You got it.
That's the right answer.
You got it.
That's always the right answer. Even if you didn't grow, if you were born, 18 years ago, and someone asked that question, that would still be the right answer.
However, I will say,
quarter
step down is Seven's arc when you get to like Scorpion and stuff.
Yeah,
you
Scorpion
see the humanization of a person, and she is so damn good. She's no right to be that good.
That's why whenever someone says what's your favorite series, I always go like, they're all great, but if I gotta say which one do I rewatch the most, it's Voyager, and it's largely because of seasons 4 and 5.
It's pretty good. Yeah, and then below that, I mean, Cisco, from when she get into the Dominion War stuff, you're just like, Jesus Christ.
So many characters on Deep Space Nine.
Right?
I mean, all the secondary characters like Garrick.
Yes.
Andy Robertson.
Garrick's great.
And then when you even have
Gal Gadot.
why am I drawing a
Odo, a man of honor.
Odo's great, but
Well,
who works for Ducat? Why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Yeah. Yes, sniveling.
Why can't
Yeah, I forgot his name too.
And he has a great kind of arc too, where he sort of sees the light.
Yep.
We got a super chat from Mexican Iron Man. Rumor has it that a certain Mexican guy may have shed more than a few tears on the road scene. Because there ain't supposed to be crying with your sombrero on. And on that note, I would like to address the results of the poll. It's ran for at least an hour. We are at 57% yes.
There you
to
go.
a little over 600 votes and 43% no. So,
Damar, that's his name. Damar.
Yes to the tears.
Yeah, 20% are lying. I just want to put it out. You cried.
Ain't no shame in it.
Another super chat from 200 Watt Studio. East Coast up at 3 a.m. every Thursday. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's
Appreciate
awesome.
that. Keep going.
Yeah.
Also
I'm up
sleep.
every Wednesday night too because I have to edit a video. So all night.
Well
all
said.
night.
On that Red
Star
Bull.
Trek should drop though at that choice like HBO 9 p.m. time slot on a Wednesday or a Thursday. I just feel like if you want to get people talking online, that is the ideal time to drop a new show. I'm just throwing that out there.
It would be easier on my Thursdays. That's
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
wonder if it's like it's supposed because it comes out on Thursday. It just happens at midnight on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I wonder if they even have the ability to like time it like that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
HBO owns Sunday because of that slot, and I feel like Star Trek needs to take over their own night of the
Just
week.
take over. From Echo Base, is there any way Terry could get Cisco back into this world or his son Jake? I know fans would love to see them and other DS9 characters come back.
Jake,
I
I
mean,
think for
I'm
sure.
sure where there is.
Jake,
Well, you
man.
know what? These are one of those questions I can't touch because there's so much more coming.
There ain't no way Roger Avery's coming back, though.
Yeah, I don't think Cisco's coming back, boss. But maybe his son.
Future season, like if you did a future, series or something like that, you could definitely see more characters returning, especially after seeing how lovingly you guys have brought back these characters. I'm sure the actors are lining up.
I mean, I don't even think Avery's on the planet anymore, is he?
He
Disappeared.
took off.
Alternate dimension.
Him and Elon Musk are on Mars tweeting.
I
right.
thought it was funny. We had back to the shuttle pod one more time. It was such a great show. You had Dominic Keating saying, "Oh my God, Terry Matalas is the one show running Picard
I saw
season
that.
3." I had no idea, right? And so I sent this. I actually sent this to Terry last night because it's funny. He goes, "I wish I should have been nicer to him." It was
Yeah, that's so great. That was so
like,
great.
yeah, I bet you do, Dominic. I bet you
Hilarious.
do.
Yeah, we'll go. Maybe Terry can finish Enterprise. I'm just saying. All right,
I'd be down.
Andre Benson for $5. I'm just like Matt Kadich. I set my alarm for 3 a.m. my time to watch the new episode of Picard because I don't want to wait later in the day to watch it and to get spoiled by all us evil YouTubers with thumbnails. I'm just
Just
saying.
on Twitter, if you have to be careful. They did such a great job last week of not spoiling it. Huge shout out to all the Star Trek Twitter fans who kept it together and didn't spoil anything for like
Thank you very
hours
much.
after midnight. I mean, that takes like the level of humanity, like good person humanity,
And
to not
empathy.
do that. I was proud.
But I'll be honest, I scheduled a tweet for like 7 hours after the fact. I did
I'm
that.
actually surprised
Wow.
that like CBS and Paramount Plus haven't done anything. Like, you know, you have this kerfluffle with WB spoiling the big reveal in Shazam in the commercials. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet with this show.
Terry's fought some battles though.
Yes.
There have been some things where they wanted to spoil stuff, and you know, and that's another. It's a very funny thing in that when you're in a promo department, you know, you're making your job is to take footage you've been given and you make a trailer or whatever. Well, they're not told a lot of the time that people making trailers haven't watched all 10 hours of the show, and they're like, well, this is cool, let's put this in there, and you're like, no, they don't know. And so that's another thing Terry was luckily involved with, was a lot of the time the showrunners don't get to oversee the promos, you know, the 30-second promos or what's released, and Terry's had to step in, you know, and make sure that things weren't, and that's, you know, again, that's because he cares and people have listened to him, which is, and that's another thing, you know, as much as I have railed against Alex Kurtzman, I don't know the man. I actually quite enjoyed a little bit his Man Who Fell to Earth. He made a sequel to Nicholas Roeg's movie, by the way, that's just recently, it's coming out in a 4K steelbook from the UK, which I just saw was shipped to me today. So nice. Shout out to that. But so, you know, he did put him in charge and has been, and it is apparently not lost on Alex Kurtzman what Terry was able to do. But, you know, when you control a franchise, it all comes down to money. It ain't show friends, it's show business, man.
Right. Show business. Right.
And
it's
you know,
that's
what Bob Sugar said and Jerry Maguire.
And Alex was like a, you know, he was like a when there were things that we wanted to do, he was very gracious about going, yeah, let's go for it. Let's swing for the fences. And you know, telling Terry, excuse me. Well, that's a tongue twister. Telling Terry, yeah, go do that crazy thing. Let's try it. You know, and for that we're incredibly grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Got a super chat from Dustin Cole. Here's the biggest compliment I can give season 3, even if I have to pay $5 or $10 per episode, or sit through ads to watch the show. I would.
That's
I would buy it on Prime. You know, there's some shows where I'm like, They're like, you know, they're like breaking, like Better Call Saul. I bought it on Prime. I wouldn't buy a lot of shows, but I would buy this. For sure.
I'd pay to see each episode in the theater if I could. I know Robert got to see a few episodes at the. Was it the Chinese theater where you saw?
Oh, dude,
we saw the first couple episodes.
Episodes 1 and 2, and it looks great and sounds great.
Dude, and when the Titan comes in and breaks up the 2 ships,
dude. Hey, you know, one never knows.
10-hour marathon,
tuned, kids.
Anything could happen.
IMAX theater.
Maybe.
You never know.
Oh my God, 10-hour marathon at the IMAX. Sign me up, boys.
Oh yeah.
But you never know. I mean, I certainly would like to, you know, because people, it's not a spoiler to say Terry directed the last 2 episodes.
Yes, he did.
He wrote. I think he wrote and directed them both. Because he's co-written. I don't know if he has sole writing credit on.
He directed them for sure.
He wrote. Yeah, he directed both because it was a block. He wrote 10. Sean Tretta and Kylie Rossiter wrote 9.
Okay.
And all the writers were involved in breaking everything.
Yeah.
What are the odds you could get the Paramount Theater to just marathon the entire season? And
oh my God.
Oh God, please. We got a super chat from Eddie from outer space. Greetings from Germany. Hello.
Wow.
I love Picard season 3, and I have to wait until Friday to be able to watch it. It's a whole day of extra waiting. Now I feel bad about the thumbnail comment. Sorry.
I feel so bad. Yeah. I feel so bad for everybody across the pond that has to wait an extra day. It is. You have to stay away from your. I mean, look. You know, you guys need to take Thursdays off. Go for a walk. Take the kids out. Whatever. You know.
Yeah, we got a super chat from Mac M for $10. Did Trip really die? It was a holodeck recreation. Who knows how accurate it really was? That is a great point, Mac.
Headcanon.
You saw that in Voyager. Voyager had lying historical records.
Matt, when you eventually write this series with Terry, and I'm just predicting it now, remember this super chat, because that's a good point. I'm just saying we can bring
absolutely that is filed away in the holodeck headcanon.
Yes, Connor really wants to come back.
Yeah, everyone wants him back. He actually sells a shirt that says "Trip didn't really die."
I love it. Oh, I need that shirt. That's
Oliver Lavier Farag. Hey, Matt, absolutely loving Picard season 3. The writing is fantastic. Great job from the whole team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He
Oliver.
also says, "Voyager for the win." Yeah, me and you both, brother. Me and you both. Super chat from Sir Laddie of D. Oh, sorry, bud. Sir Larry of D. I don't know why I tried. See, it's all one. One word. Sir Larry of D. I cried when Titan left space dock. We were back.
Me too.
Beautiful thing.
I did too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Super
that was
chat
the
from
first time.
Ghostwriter.
It made me cry for the first time I saw it. I was actually, I was like, I had to look away because I was like, I'm actually, this is way too soon to be having tears.
It felt really good when that, the Neo Constitution class or whatever. When I saw that, I love that so much care is put into this, where we're back to the long drawn out shots of the ship.
Yeah.
Like, maybe some people might not like, but I love it.
Well, because it sells the idea that they're capital ships.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's one of the things about modern Star Trek, not just modern Star Trek. Sometimes they were guilty of this in TNG and Deep Space Nine. But look, even though space, I remember reading Vonda McIntyre's novel, The Entropy Effect, which was the first Star Trek novel pocket released after the motion picture. And there's scenes where Sulu, so long ago, was working a simulator that people could watch, and he was making starships tumble end over end, because you can with inertial dampeners and whatever. And I'm like, well, that would be cool, and you get a little bit of that idea. I love that with the X, Y, and Z axis that the Titan is falling into the nebula, and there's a lot of great shots when it's flying by and the power is flickering and all that. I mean, I know, but they didn't even do that in Star Trek 2, But the idea that these are capital ships pounding on each other, like grand sailing ships. I mean, it's not like that. But you're conveying the idea that it is. I mean, technically, these ships are thousands of kilometers apart, and they're firing at one another or whatever. But from a dramatic standpoint, it would be no fun if you couldn't see a starship like the Intrepid rise up.
Oh God, that's
the dragon shot.
And the enormity of it also sells like scenes like when he tosses the asteroid and stuff like that. Like it makes it more believable.
Another thing that Terry did too that is not, I mean, he's allowed, like there's a guy named Bill Krause who is a modeler and who basically modeled the Intrepid and the Titan based on designs he'd been building for a long time. He's a fan. Yeah. He's an expert modeler. He would be putting his awesome, they were all non-canonical. They were starships in the Star Trek universe that he designed. And he would always have them on display at Wonderfest, and his work was available online. Terry tracked him down and said, awesome. I mean, who would no? I'm telling, no one else would do that. And just like
he DM'd him on Insta.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. And if you see, that guy's incredibly talented, and he designed these ships. And the same when he went back to Dan Curry, who designed the Batleth Dan Curry is one of the 2 visual effects supervisors on Next Generation. And Terry went back to Dan Curry and said, hey, we've got the Mechleth or whatever. Can you make me a Klingon broadsword or whatever you asked him? Mm. And that's where we have Worf's new sword. I mean, the guy who created the Batleth.
And as soon as it's available, it'll be right there behind me.
Yeah. I mean, but that's another thing that speaks to him. And, everyone's talking about, you're always filleting Terry. I'm like, well, if he deserves it, sure, why not? But the thing is, he went and did these kinds of things, which I don't think a lot of showrunners on any legacy show would necessarily do. I mean, to go outside of the art department or whatever and get Bill Krause to design stuff and also bring back the Akutas and Drexler and all these people.
Yeah, that was a must.
I mean, all of that was it speaks to, and the funny thing about Star Trek is it has 57 years of legacy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we made us fans in the first place was the design lineage that, the Voyager's intermix chamber was the Enterprise's intermix chamber from the motion picture. So there was always this design lineage that ran through the show. And we have 250 years of it, 300 years of it now that you're into the 25th century. And if you want to consider Discovery, which I don't, canonical in the 31st century, but you can, I don't know where those designs came from, but they're still there. You can still look at that.
Well, they're all classified now. That's what it is.
Right. Well, no one knows what. Yeah, no one knows what the 31st. I mean, and also the funny thing is there's design elements in Star Trek that are just cool, like Star Destroyers and X-wing fighters in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You like those things. TIE fighters, for whatever reason, might not be practical, but I want to see a ball. Absolutely. Or I want to see. You want to. That's a TIE fighter.
And the size difference is also really it makes it more epic.
And even something like going back to the Birds of Prey from TOS, they just look. You can't put it into words. You're just like, I don't know, man. It looks awesome.
They're cool.
Well, I mean, and the people like Hua Chang going all the way. If you look at the first time we saw a Romulan ship was in Balance of Terror, and then the first time we saw a Klingon battlecruiser, it wasn't until the 3rd season, and it was Elaine of Troyes, and that was the first time and that was because AMT model kits wanted them to make those things. But those are two, the Klingon Bird of Prey or Warbird, whatever, from Balance of Terror is one of the coolest. Even the way it was shot, how they shot the model from below so you could see the.
Right.
I mean, that was dope.
Yes.
So cool.
To give some Strange New Worlds some credit, there was a shot in Strange New Worlds where you can actually see that same bird. And it was so subtle and so quick that I missed it the first 3 times. So.
Yeah,
we got Super Chat from Ghost Rider. To all those involved in Picard Season 3, may your work bring glory to you and your house. Kapla!
Well said.
I'm glad you yelled that out. There's no other way to do that.
Well,
you can't.
You can't say kapla like
right?
Kapla. No, you have to scream it. We got a Super Chat from El Presidento Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. 7 can also cook. If you remember in Voyager, why didn't you talk to Worf again? Dumar, rest in peace, Wayon. I was Wayon.
Dumar.
That was his name. We also have a Super Chat from Michael. My bad, Michael. Nemo. The moment I realized Picard Season 3 was going to be different was when 7 didn't kill Shaw in the first episode. The parallel of having Berman basically kill Giorgio is a resounding difference.
I mean,
that was well earned. Thank you.
That was earned. Yeah, you earned that. We had another Super Chat from Michael too. I would sit in the theater for 10 hours to see this entire season on the big screen. Just saying. Yeah, same.
Absolutely.
Oh man, imagine the fan event that would be. All of us sitting in a giant IMAX theater watching. Right? It'd be 10 hours.
Some kegs of Romulan ale to get everybody fired up.
By the end of that 10 hours, it would smell disgusting, but I would be in it.
I would do it. I'd still do it.
You heard it right here, Paramount Studio execs. We want something on the big screen for everybody to go watch. Whatever you got to do to make that happen, whether it's the rest of the series we haven't seen yet, or you put the whole thing together, somebody please make that happen.
Man, I'll organize something out here in Vegas for everyone.
Yes, and I will join you for that.
Yes, we'll come out. We'll come out for that.
Thank you, Rob, for convincing me to give Trek another chance. Thank you, Matt, for your contribution in bringing back the magic.
Awesome.
Dude, I went out on a limb, man. I would have my total YouTube channel would shut down, and I'd have no more credit. There's some people that still think I have no credibility.
No, we had the same exact conversation. I remember talking to Shane after we saw it, and we're like, so this is the best Trek I've seen since like Voyager. Everyone's gonna be mad at us when we say those words. Like, literally every single person that has ever subscribed to us or given us a super chat ever is gonna be mad at us the second we start praising this. And Shane's like, yeah, well, gotta do what we gotta do.
Well, no, it was very interesting because I had to ask first of all. I'm like, because at first I can't, I wasn't gonna say anything, but then it was kind of like Terry was like, I saw Pacific Rim about 4 months before it opened, and I'm a big kaiju fan, Japanese science fiction, robots, give it to me. And I love that movie so much. And I went with Derek Hughes, and we went, and Guillermo was actually at the theater.
Oh, so cool.
And he was talking, and I was like, dude, can we tell people about this? He goes, in Guillermo's way, he goes, tell your friends, tell everybody, because I loved it. I loved it so much. And Terry was kind of like that. He goes, no, yeah, go ahead and tell everyone.
You got me on board back in November. I was watching one of your live streams, and when I heard you, because I heard you speak about other Star Trek shows in a less flattering light.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I heard you start talking about Picard, I was like, I was happy to let Star Trek drift out of my life forever. Unlike you, I wasn't willing to just watch Star Trek I didn't like just so I could criticize it accurately. I just let it drift away. I was like, I guess I got to start brushing up on my my Star Trek. And so I slowly started easing back into the shallow end of the pool. And then by the time the show came around, I was
I had gone so hard against seasons 1 and 2. I mean, to the point of people were so sick of me hearing, it's like, don't you have anything better to do with your time, Rob?
But you did it with specificity. Most people just have like a catch-all term. You actually criticize details, which is
well, it doesn't. I don't think saying that something sucks is ever conducive to anything at all. You have to explain why do you dislike, and I think a lot of people don't know why they dislike things.
Right.
So they can't articulate it. So saying it just sucks.
And they can't verbalize it. And by the way, those people probably shouldn't be critics on YouTube.
Well, yeah.
You have to be able to verbalize your problems with something and don't just like, it sucks.
Yeah.
But the thing about Star Trek Picard season 3 is it's like any great story. It's about the characters and the story that they're in the midst of. And for a Star Trek story, it's always about the humanity of our characters. When you're out there on the edge of the final frontier, what we have to bring with us is our humanity. And when I saw episodes like when Riker talks about, like in 17 seconds, there's the conversation about, it was the longest 17 seconds of my life. And little things that I don't think people necessarily think about, but when Riker says, I've traveled from one side of the galaxy to the other, but I've seen nothing that tells me that there's an afterlife.
Right.
And I'm like, this is profound, because Star Trek doesn't necessarily directly address religion, but the idea that there's something more in the cosmic infinitude, I think, is a really wonderful idea. And to find out that that's basically why he ran away from Deanna and his daughter was because he was bringing that kind of darkness. And then at the end of episode 4, when he's I thought it was so great, again, editorial, you think he's recording that message because they cut to the message paused.
Yeah, and you're staying on him.
And you think he's recording a message, and when it pulls out and you see Marina Sirtis, you see Deanna, again, I'm thinking about it right now, I get a lump in my throat, because that, again, is the kind of emotional storytelling when he refers back, we've witnessed a kind of birth here.
Yes.
And that is the kind of thing that I had been missing from Star Trek, real character-based emotional content that I believed.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched this whole season 2 with Picard's mom and hanging or something. I understand that's what Patrick Stewart wanted to do. And I get it. You entice an actor to come back to a role by allowing them to contribute, and they want to make it about their own lives. That makes sense because that's what they understand. But that isn't Star Trek to me. And in the 23rd or 24th or 25th centuries, we've seen in the first season of TOS, they have mental institutions to help people. They might not have great people that work in those mental institutions, but because again, that was a reflection on what was going on in our hospitals and mental care in the 60s at the time, as we saw like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But the reason that I was so enamored of this season of Star Trek is all look, the plot's great. The techno thriller plot's great, but it's these characters and their interaction. That's what sold me. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I liked all the starship porn and all the canonical craziness and everything. That's all great. But you know what? It was seeing our characters. They felt real, that these are characters that had aged 30 years. And the way they were talking to each other, they had lived life. They had learned a lot more. To learn more about yourself isn't necessarily what you're learning, when you're fighting the take your pick. If you're on Captain Dathon and in an episode learning how to speak metaphorically or whatever, you're learning. And I think that's what what the writing staff has done so marvelously well. And if you see all the things that are interwoven in the show, what do fathers give to sons, or what do parents give to, what is their legacy? What is it you leave behind for people?
Yeah.
Whether it's inadvertent or not. And as we move along, you're going to find out, maybe there's things that we give to our kids or lessons we teach that aren't necessarily what we wish we had done, or you see Ro Laren and Picard, 30 years of animosity is unfortunately in the midst of a situation, but you still get to have that closure. This is stuff that I thought was gone from Star Trek.
Right.
Yeah, that was the greatest lesson that I took away as a writer from Terry. And I've told him, we went out to breakfast and I told him this. I said, the thing that I'm always thinking about now, always, is how do I feel?
Yeah.
How do I feel? Because the thing that I'll remember, the cool ships, which no one fought harder for those shots than Terry, because he wanted to bring back, the old-fashioned submarine space battles, and was meticulous about putting those on screen. But he's right. The thing, the patter between the crew, that's important. The mystery, the way it's unfolding, the clue trails, that's important. But in 15 years, the thing you're going to remember is the wordless exchange between Beverly and Picard.
Yeah.
She finally affirms what he's been dreading the entire episode. That moment's going to stay with me forever. And that's the thing I think that makes me come back that makes me come back again and again is feeling something. And when you're writing, you can put all the explanation and expos in the world, but if I feel nothing, I haven't done my job.
Right. Well said, Matt. Let me just point out here, and this is, we're not going around here to beat up old Star Trek or the new Trek, other shows, but I think the big difference that you hit on here is, are the characters having emotional moments, or are the fans having emotional moments?
Right.
And if you're building a show for the fan base to say, oh my God, I'm having this moment, then I think you're winning, and that's what you guys accomplished there. Matt, you got a question for Matt, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, we know that the people involved with Star Trek are kind of aware of the criticisms out there. Like, I'm sure they go on YouTube and see what people are saying about their episodes. And I'm sure this goes for every, like Discovery, Picard, all that stuff. But I was wondering, like, do you know how much of the criticism that the Paramount executives are aware of? Are they like hearing, Kurtzman isn't very popular amongst the Star Trek fans and stuff like that, or are they just kind of oblivious to it, or do they just write it off?
I can't say one way or the other, to be honest. I'm not sure. I haven't had any conversations with any of the execs because, part of a showrunner's job is to make sure that they insulate their writing staff from questions about, other than getting notes on your episode, to insulate you about contract talks and criticisms and stuff. Focus on the work, focus on telling a story, and let me handle that. So I'm actually not sure, to be honest. The only thing I can say that I know for certainty, because I know the way that the money works, is that if you have a vote, it's with your views. It's with the things you watch over and over and over. And so if you love something, watch it over and over and over. That really does help, especially in the first week and the first month. That goes so far. And if you don't like something, that's a vote too. And everyone is entitled to their vote.
Well said.
It sounds like there's no difference on their end between hate watching versus love watching, but I guess people who love watch something watch it 5 or 6 times.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. A good way to put that is, we don't have control of the politics. So we don't have any control as to what happens, but we can control what we like and make ourselves heard. And so I think that's really well put. Thank you.
There's a super chat from Good T Nice House. I said this on Rob's podcast the other night. No Trek actor has ever won an Emmy for Trek. The writing and acting in Picard season 3 is top notch and Emmy worthy. That's not exactly true. I think Leonard Nimoy was nominated, right, for an Emmy, if I remember correctly.
That, it's funny. I don't remember. He might have been. But again, genre science fiction, fantasy, and horror up till fairly recently was not. It never really taken seriously as one of the. With Lord of the Rings, it took how many decades before an epic fantasy film. Star Wars was beat out at the Academy Awards by Annie Hall, Woody Allen's Annie Hall. And so, I think that science fiction has not. Nowadays, of course, we have Game of Thrones that has won tons of Emmys, and there's not, and I think it's because the audience changed.
Yeah.
You know, the audience, you worked on the Shannara series. I mean, I remember growing up and when I was in when I remember when that book came out, I got the Sword of Shannara from my book club, the sci-fi book club. You know, and I'd read the Lord of the Rings, but that was like this. There was there was the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, and then there was the Shannara books, and that was it. You know, and the idea that you would make, I mean, Dragon Slayer came out in 4K today. That was 81. I mean, that was
nice.
Back in the day. It's like, people didn't dig fantasy, and now the world has
even
changed.
The star of Dragon Slayer would say horrible things about Dragon Slayer. So yeah,
yes.
even the people who were involved frowned upon it.
Came out as a 4K, beautiful 4K. It should probably be sitting on my doorstep. But
just heads up, Leonard Nimoy had 3 nominations as Spock for outstanding continued performance by an actor in a supporting role, but no actual wins.
And not for a lead role.
Nope, right. Supporting.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Well, okay, there you go. That's good to know. But yeah, I mean, that's changed. So maybe, but then again, even now, certain subject matter is considered more prestigious than other subject matter, and it's like, you know, when every time somebody else wins, it's. I mean, people said that Everything Everywhere All at Once was too lightweight to win the Oscar. Yeah. I mean, the subject matter, you can't have multiverses and all this, you know, be winning the Oscar when it should have been Banshees of Inisherin, you know, and it's, we still have to deal with that.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it matters what platform you come out on, like something on HBO or even now Apple Plus, because something like, what is it? Severance, which I loved, will get more weight than something that, say, comes out on Peacock. You know?
Yes. And that's so weird and prejudicial that it doesn't really make much sense, but I get it.
Oh,
I totally get it.
Brands matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think Apple Plus shows they've done there's some great stuff on Apple Plus. You know, they only
if you
make
watch a movie from the late 60s and you see the Paramount logo, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to be edgy. Cool.
And there's good stuff on Peacock too. American Auto I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying that so much right now. It's insane.
I like Poker Face.
Poker Face is great.
Face is great too. Yeah, great show. Like, yeah.
She's terrific.
She's so good.
Oh
but again, that's like Rian Johnson. You know, here's $450 million. Go make 2 more Knives Out movies. Okay.
Right.
As long as he stays away from Star Wars, I'm good with that.
You got super chat from the son of John. Yikes! I figured out that Jack is Damon Omen. You mean like Satan's son?
Damien Thorne. Damien Thorne.
How cool was that moment, Matt, when you guys realized that he's going to become Jason Bourne in space and start taking out changelings? Like that was pretty cool. We can't wait to see what that turns out to be.
Isn't that's shout out to our stunt guys, man. They when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, that looks good.
So bad.
And so is the choreography when Worf is fighting Rafi, and then Worf just like has one hand up and he's parrying her blows. That was like
and he's bored.
Yeah, it was that was awesome.
So good.
It was so good.
You know, we thought that was going to be a quick 20-second fight, and the stunt guys were like, "Well, we did this," and we went, "Oh my god." Good for you.
But even better was when Shaw says "nice shooting, kid" when he hears about what Jack did. So it's like, it's
nice shooting, kid.
You're building up on what came before, but anyway, priceless moment.
Oh yeah,
so good. Stash.
Well, let's go around the horn here last time and try to wrap this up. Kadish, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I wanted to thank Matt for coming on and being very candid and honest. And it's always great to have people from the show on here, especially because they're just straight shooters with us. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
James?
Thank you very much for by the way, for
staying up to episode 8. Yeah, Matt, it's been fascinating hearing you talk about the inner workings of the show. I mean, as fans, we oftentimes have a very kind of nebulous or mysterious understanding of the inner workings of a show. It's just great to hear some tales from the trenches about how the sausage gets made. So thanks so much for coming on and talking with us.
Thank you, James. And thanks for spreading the word.
Big Bob Burnett.
You know, Matt, I would just ask you have people forget that like you guys did your work on this show a year ago, and you have a new show coming out that I noticed it's listed on IMDb. Can you talk about that at all?
Oh, sure. Oh, thank you for asking. It's so kind of you. It's called Interior Chinatown. It's based on the National Book Award of the Year, I think it was last year, written by Charles Yu. and the pilot was directed by Taika Waititi.
Wow.
Who did an incredible job. And it's trippy, man. It stars Jimmy O Yang, Chloe Bennett, and Ronnie Chang.
God, I love Ronnie Chang. Oh my God.
So good. I think they're really going to surprise people with their range and their depth, and of course their humor. And it it is one of the sort of most meta swing for the fences concepts I've ever been a part of. And I hope people can kind of dig it and enjoy it and really laugh, but also.
When are we going to see it, and where is it on?
It's on Hulu, and probably not till next year is my guess. We don't have an air date yet because they're literally shooting as we speak.
Right, sure.
They're shooting episode 5, and I just finished my time on set producing my episode a couple of weeks ago, which was a thrill. So yeah, and Charlie's he's really another one of those really great, kind human beings.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you for coming, Matt. And I actually have a question too, not about Star Trek actually. Any news on Leverage? Can we somehow pull some of the actors that I guess aged out of it or whatever could come back for the show?
I would say never. I wasn't involved in season 2 because I was on this, but I know there are conversations happening about a season 3. So stay tuned.
Really?
I don't know anything official. I know that conversations are being had. So if you like it, go and watch it.
Yeah. Leverage is one of my favorite legacy shows, and Redemptions is not as good as the original, but that's also because it doesn't have Timothy Hutton and the guy that was on Black Adam recently. Like, it needs the whole crew. You get the whole crew back together, easy win. I think that it's still good, but we need the whole crew back.
I mean, Hardison, we begged and pleaded. He's so expensive now because he's a
so
big movie star.
I saw he came back for like a video conference or whatever. Like, I could tell that was like, well, that was like the cheapest option in order to get him back.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Awesome.
But yeah, he's awesome. So,
and by the way, I'd like to thank all of you for being so kind and just, continuing to support the season, getting the word out, being so thoughtful with your comments and your questions. And it really does mean the world to all of us because it was a very hard show to make. And we follow all of you on Twitter and Instagram, and we watch your shows. And trust me when I say that it means the world to every single one of us, Terry included.
Thank you so much, Matt. And if you want to follow Matt on Twitter, he is Matt Okumura, and it's Matto Goofing Off.
The link is in the description.
That's all I do on Twitter.
Also, we got Matt Kadish here with the Salty Nerd Podcast. You guys can check them out. They have great shows all week long. And then Geekin with James Hancock, of course. Always great content, fantastic. And the Burnett work. Don't forget Robert Meyer Burnett with all of the great high IQ takes. We appreciate you guys so much.
I love that. That's a high IQ take.
Right? Mental libations. That's right.
I just want your room, man. I don't want to live there. That's great.
Well, you should see the physical media collection over here, and
man.
But I don't have. I used to have a lot more stuff, but it's just a collection of odds and ends. It's all cool. Different kinds of things now. But I'm trying to pare it all down.
Well, we're gonna get a Titan for you soon.
I need a Titan. I want a 1/350.
Don't forget about me, Matt.
Yeah, Brian needs a pillow.
Hey, me too.
I swear to God, if I see Rob with a Titan and there was no word to me, I'm gonna be so pissed.
Well, Terry has a Titan. It's pretty damn cool.
It's pretty sweet, right?
It's really sweet.
What are you doing,
and I
man?
believe he's got a Shrike now too.
Okay. All right.
Oh God, I love you.
Yeah, but
so much.
Terry also owns a real DeLorean time machine.
Yeah.
So
he has an actual DeLorean, like the time machine.
He has
not a replica.
two. Yeah. But that's what you get when you become a showrunner. You got to get that TV money.
Yeah. Can I tell you guys something? Real quick aside. If I owned a DeLorean, I would have pulled up to this Picard season 3 premiere in that DeLorean. I don't care how slow it took me. I would have pulled up with that thing with full lights and everything, with some dry ice coming out of it. I would have pulled up. I would have gotten out of that car like the biggest nerd bother on the planet to walk.
This is why we need a spinoff. We gotta do. You know, that's
the thing is,
Oh,
Terry
God.
is that guy. He just wants to put on airs of being an important showrunner in Hollywood.
I'm
But
important.
He's a nerd.
Yeah.
He's a nerd, just like
So
the rest
when
of
we
us.
get season 4, Terry's gonna pull up in that DeLorean with the dry ice coming off of it.
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion on the top. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. And of course, make sure you guys continue to support Picard Season 3 if you're enjoying it. Make sure you sign the petition. We'll have that in the link below. Everybody's channels. Please go subscribe to everybody's channels here and check out Matt on Twitter. And we appreciate you so much for tuning in with us today. Make sure you come back Thursday. We'll be back for the Popcast Unleashed at 12:30, where we'll be breaking down episode 6 of Picard, scene by scene, frame by frame. We look forward to seeing you guys then. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you guys next time.
Adios.